The ravens came first, beating silver-tipped wings through the pale dawn over the neck, their calls scattering mist across the reeds like ghosts in flight. In Winterfell's rookery the birds arrived in pairs, black arrows against the pearl light, and the maester's gnarled hands trembled as he snapped loose the message tubes and spread the wax-sealed folds upon the map table. Northern winds whispered down the broken tower, stirring the scent of cold iron and burning pine from the fires lit all night in the great hall. Beneath those curling draughts Jon Snow stood silent, the wolfskin of his cloak rising with each thoughtful breath while his eyes traced every word Doran Nimmerus Martell had set to parchment. The stark banners, the grey direwolf, proud and unbending, no longer flapped alone above the ramparts. Close beside them rose the red, sun-pierced spear of Dorne, and the red, three-headed dragon of House Targaryen, both rippling upon the wind like new-forged promises. Yet inside these walls, nothing felt finished. The stones themselves seemed to hold their breath, as though wary of the fragile treaty signed only days past, a contract inked by men and women who had tasted too much death to trust swiftly in peace. Jon's gloved finger rested upon the Dornish seal. "The prince writes well," he murmured. "Too well, perhaps. Every word is a chess piece. He offers ships, harvest wagons laden with oranges and olives, gold from the scour pools of Sunspear, but all in exchange for Hallis Mullen's report on the Free City's intentions. Dorne's spies whisper that Mirren Liss leaned toward the Golden Company again. Benderwar." Across the table, Daenerys Targaryen listened, pale hair slipping across her shoulders like moonlit silk upon armor. Dragon-scale plates the color of midnight clung to her in overlapping crescents, yet no blade hung at her hip. She had worn swords long enough. Now she embraced the colder steel of negotiation, though she found it no lighter to bear. "Gold and citrus can sweeten alliances," she said, stroking lightly the inked words as if weighing their warmth. "But information is heat itself in the veins of power. Doran knows what we stand to lose if Sellswords flood Westeros once more." "They were Bermshaw." "He is cautious," Jon replied. "As cautious as winter approaching in the night, unseen but inevitable. Still, I would trust him over so many lords who called themselves friends when crowns were cheap, then vanished when coffers ran dry." At the far edge of the map, Arya Stark lounged on a bench, boots upon the ledge, a half-eaten apple spinning in her fingers. Her laughter rang low and skeptical. "Trust a prince who sits behind colored glass, who writes poetry about vipers and deserts while others bleed at the rivers. A fine notion, brother. Yet I recall Dornish spears in my nightmares of King's Landing, and Dornish smiles behind purple wedding cups." "It's not poison we fear now," said Sansa softly from the window embrasure. She pressed a palm to the cold stone sill, as if grounding herself in old childhood memories, so that the present might seem less fragile. "It's the ghosts we carry. Every river, every keep, every hill wears scars, bald red, burnt black. We cannot dress the realm in silks unless we first stitch shut those wounds, and Dorne offers thread and balm." Now, outside, across the bailey, fresh fallen snow balanced upon rooftops like fragile crowns of powdered diamond. The smithy's orange glow painted the air with sparks where Gendry hefted glowing iron. Each clang echoed through the yard and up the winding stair, faint as distant bells. It mingled with the muffled roar of dragons roosting beyond the broken wall, where Rhaegal and Viserion perched upon the ancient ramparts, warming stones that had known no such heat since the Age of Heroes. Daenerys listened to their calls, low and thunderous, and felt the old ache of loss for Drogon, the great black shadow who had fallen above King's Landing in that final battle years past. Sometimes she still dreamed him beneath her, wings devouring the sky, but woke to the bite of winter wind and the truth of new beginnings. Being rebuilt from cinder and snow, she reminded herself, and now possibly from sun. Jon's gaze lingered on Daenerys in the hush between breaths. Even here, months into uneasy peace, the space between them felt charged, full of a memory, and of words left unsaid since the wars last night upon the Red Keep's shattered throne room. He blinked those thoughts away. Duty called first. "We must decide," he said. "The ravens wait. The prince asks, that delegates from the north and from Dragonstone ride to River Run at first thaw. There, in the hall of House Tully, we three, Stark, Targaryen, Martell, will sign the Pact of Three Flames and Winter. From that pact, a council of unity shall grow. 12 seats, shared by blood and merit, sworn to arbitrate disputes that might divide the realm again. A small council larger than any before, with power equal to a crown yet spared its curses. Bandinro. He asks also. Maester Luvin's successor piped up. A thin man named Maester Willem, scholarly, seldom heard. That each house send relics to be so-called cornerstones of the council. A wolf carved of weirwood, the blade Dark Sister, and the spear of Nymeria. Symbolic offerings to show trust. Naum. A hush settled as they considered these tokens. Pieces of the past to anchor the future, yet each a treasure heavy with stories, some dark as blood wine. Arya whistled low. Dark Sister was lost when Bloodraven vanished beyond the wall, or so the tales say. How does the prince intend to place a ghost upon the council table? Daenerys smiled thinly. The prince knows full well I possess it now. My men found the blade sheathed in crystal ice, within the cave of the three-eyed raven, after we breached the Night King's stronghold. I have kept it hidden for story's sake, yet perhaps the time for hiding is past. Medinye. Jon turned toward her, surprise flickering across his face. You never said. I have said many things, she answered, voice low, and kept many others close until hearts could bear them. Dark Sister is more than steel. It carries the weight of 1,000 secrets, my family's victories, yes, but also their cruelties. To place it in the open is to invite all those stories to speak again. Maybe that is what we need, Sansa said, stepping from the window. Honesty. If this council is meant to unify, let it be built on truths, however sharp. We are all haunted. Better to set our ghosts at the same table than leave them roaming the corridors alone. A crackle from the hearth punctuated her words. Flames licked upward, devouring pine. Shadows twisted along the walls where once the skins of direwolves had hung. Now they were folded away, preserved for a day when children of the north might walk unfearing once more. Jon traced the map's coastline westward, past the Twins and Moat Cailin, until he reached River Run's painted keep. Snowflakes drifted from his sleeve as he rested there. The Trident's waters are swollen still, he said. Ice from the Red Fork flows fast. By thaw the fields will flood, but the castle stands high above the banks, a fitting place for talk, a place touched by every river, and by blood, Arya muttered, tossing her apple core into the fire. Catelyn Stark's bones rest beneath those stones, and Robb's memory lingers where tents once rose. River Run knows better than any keep how alliances can bend and break. Sansa's blue eyes softened at her sister's bitterness. All the more reason to choose it. The Riverlands lie at the realm's heart. They have paid a dear price and learned caution. Let them see reconciliation born in their halls first. Beyond the thick glass of the eastern arrow slit the sky brightened, violet giving way to pale gold. Dawn crested across the godswood, gilding every branch in frost. Snow melted on the heart tree's face and trickled like tears down the carved weirwood cheeks. Jon looked toward that sacred grove. I will pray before I decide, he said. In the godswood silence, the world tasted of pine resin and fresh snow. Thin sunlight shimmered through the red leaves overhead, each one etched by rhyme. Jon knelt at the foot of the ancient weirwood, ghost lying beside him, white fur bright against the dark earth. The direwolf's red eyes followed a sparrow flitting among branches, but he made no move to pounce. This was holy ground. Jon's breath plumed white. He pressed gloved fingertips to the heart tree's smooth bark, feeling the faint thrum beneath, as though slow blood coursed through the wood. Words formed within him, but he did not speak. Instead, images rose unbidden. Ned's execution upon the Sept's steps, Robb's crown rolling through muddy grass, rows of burned children's, bones and ash strangled King's Landing. The cost of kings and crowns. The cost of choosing none. A twig snapped behind him. He turned to find Bran Stark, not rolling in his wheeled chair, but standing barefoot upon the frost, as though whiteless, eyes milky and distant, pale tunic fluttering like ghost cloth. Since the dawn of peace Bran had shed titles, calling himself simply a watcher, a door through which the world might pass, and be known. Now he tilted his head and smiled faintly. "Brother," Bran whispered, "your mind is dressed in storms again." Jon rose. "Always storms. They gather even on calm seas." "They gather," Bran agreed, "but a captain still chooses his heading." He reached to brush snow from his sleeve, though none had fallen there. "You fear another war will follow alliance, as weeds follow spring. Yet you forget that weeds can be cut, again and again, until good roots starve them of light." Jon frowned. "Too much blood has watered those roots, which is why new seed must be sown." Bran's blind gaze turned to the weirwood. A council seated in ice, fire, and sun. 3 elements may forge something the old world lacked. You stand at that fire's edge. Do not flinch. Jon opened his mouth, closed it, sighed. "I've little taste for dust-filled halls and parchment quills. I rode with the watch, bled with wildlings and Southron armies, sitting in a circle while lords quarrel again." "Is another kind of watch," Bran interrupted. "The wall fell, but a wall of words can hold back ruin if fashioned well." Ghost whined softly, nudging Jon's hand. Jon scratched behind the direwolf's ear, drawing steadiness from the bond. Finally, he looked back at Bran. "You see paths unseen. Tell me, do any end without sorrow?" "All paths tether to sorrow," Bran replied. "Even joy is stitched by it. Yet some sorrows teach more than they take." Jon laughed, a short breath turning to mist between them. "You speak like an oracle now." Bran shrugged. "I see too much, and too little. Yet I know this. If you refuse the Council of Unity, the realm will fracture, like glass cut by ice. Refusal will ring north and south, and lords who hunger for old lines of power will rise to carve again. If you accept, you lend weight enough to bring others beneath the same roof." Bran's pale eyes sharpened. "Do not mistake hesitant hearts for faithless ones. They want a Northman whom they trust, a dragon queen whose fire can warm rather than scorch, and a prince of suns who understands patience. Together you can craft a hall where the restless may cool." "Any again?" Jon met the milky gaze without flinching. "You offer comfort with one breath and warning with the next. It is the language of trees," Bran said, smiling. Then, without another word, he turned and walked through the snow until he dissolved into the lattice of branches, as though woven by them, cut apart by light and shade. Jon stood alone with Ghost. Slowly, he exhaled. "A council," he murmured. "So be it." South beneath a sky of blazing lapis, where mountains cast purple scars across the desert, and the citrus orchards chased their own perfume through warm air, Prince Doran Martell watched his daughter Arianne pace the length of the water garden's sunlit terrace. Her sandals clicked sharp upon marble mosaics, drawing lines between painted serpents that seemed to coil at each strike of her heel. She held a letter, Jon's reply, in slim brown fingers, reading for the 5th time the same measured words. "This is not agreement," she said, eyes flashing beneath black curls. "It is courtesy, father." Doran reclined upon a cushion, breath labored, but mind razor-keen. "It is the North's courtesy to send 3 ships, each laden with timber and tools to rebuild Sunspear's outer dock, still broken from Euron's raid. One must learn to hear what writing does not say." Arianne scowled. "He offers gifts so that we do not question his terms. Men born in snow think generosity is a torch in the dark. Yet Jon Snow forgets that we have worn sunlight forever. We do not fear chill so easily." Doran's thin lips quirked. "But we do recall it. Recall the long centuries when Dornish children died coughing on frost, when the marchers drove deep and set each village aflame. Memory is not the same as fear, my blazing son. And memories make us wise politicians if we wield them, rather than let them wield us." Arianne tightened her grip on the parchment. "You would see me sit among Starks and Targaryens as though we share a grandmother's lap." "Perhaps we do, if the grandmother be Nymeria, Who married how many husbands? 9? Doran chuckled softly and reached for a gold-rimmed cup of water cooled by clay. 10, by some counts. One may gather alliances as Nymeria gathered rings. It is less important how many than what each marriage births. The council will be your child. Stoke it with cunning, feed it patience, swaddle it in courtesy, and one day the child may guard Dorne better than any sand snake with a spear. 9. Arianne's face softened at the mention of her late cousins, the Viper's daughters. One by one they had fallen in the wars. Obara at Highgarden, Nymeria in the streets of Meereen, Tyne upon the pyre after the plague. Their memories bit like the sun at noon. She lowered her gaze. "I will go," she said. "Not alone." Doran gestured, and a tall man stepped from shadow beneath carved columns. Dark skin, scar across one cheek, eyes like smoldering coals. Ario Hota, captain of the guard. His long axe rested upon his shoulder, its moon-bright blade engraved with Valyrian glyphs. "Ario will escort you. He has spent too many seasons idle here while the world mends." Ario bowed. "I will protect the princess and remind others that the sun may hide behind clouds, but its heat remains." Arianne smirked. "Let us hope the northern snows do not melt entire fleets before we reach River Run." Doran lifted one trembling hand, palm up. "Go with eyes open." The letter also speaks of relics. Daenerys brings Dark Sister, Jon brings the Weirwood Wolf. We must answer in kind. Nymeria's spear remains in the crypt. Take it. Let its point rest upon the council table. But remember, a spear points both ways. On Dragonstone the sea clawed at basalt cliffs, roaring, spitting foam against black rock older than the world of men. In the Shadowkeep Daenerys walked to the vaulted corridor alone, torches lighting molten veins in the walls, and entered a steel-barred vault that once served as Aegon's armory. She paused upon the threshold. The stink of smoke and dragonfire lingered though none had burned there for centuries, as if the stones remembered. Dark Sister hung upon a stand of carved obsidian, its long slender blade shining with faint ripples where folded Valyrian steel caught firelight. An ornate hilt of dark leather bound by silver rings ended in a pommel shaped like a dragon's head. For years the sword had lain quiet, dreaming of air and flesh. Daenerys stepped forward. Her fingers hovered one trembling breath above steel. Then she closed them upon the hilt. Memories surged, visions of Visenya Targaryen astride Vagagar, sword singing above fields of blackened corpses, of Prince Daemon dueling in silk and smoke above the God's Eye, of Brynden rivers, one-eyed and cunning, carving men down beneath weeping pines. Their ghosts turned to study her with the same curiosity she felt for them. She inhaled, tasting salt, ash, blood. "You have thirsted long," she whispered to the weapon. "But I will not feed you war. If you must drink again, let it be ink and promise." She slid the blade into a new scabbard of red leather. Then she faced the door, where Missandei stood holding an oiled wood chest inlaid with garnets and silver runes. "Has the Raven Tower replied?" Daenerys asked. "Yes, your grace," Missandei said, voice precise. "Lord Gendry will sail 3 black-hulled galleys under your standard. They arrive at White Harbor in 10 days. Winter storms permitting." "Done." "Nothing permits winter," Daenerys muttered, threading Dark Sister's baldric across her shoulders. "It either relents or swallows." She took the chest from Missandei. Heavy. Inside lay parchments, court ledgers, a rolled tapestry, items she would present as tokens, records showing debts forgiven, lands restored, proof that her rule sought healing rather than conquest. She wondered if such proof held weight equal to steel and wood. Words on parchment could burn as easily, and melt with tears faster than any blade could rust. But she would bring both, fire and paper, truth and myth. Let the council decide which survived longer. Wind rattled banners along the King's Road as the Stark procession began its southward march, hooves crunching in brittle snow. Jon rode at the vanguard beside Sir Davos Seaworth, who squinted against the glare. Behind them, Sansa and Arya rode in a carriage draped in grey furs, flanked by halberdiers. Bran remained in Winterfell with the weirwood and the ravens. His counsel traveled in Jon's memory. Ghost trotted ahead, white tail streaming, his breath ghosting in air like a second wolf. Alongside padded Nymeria, larger even than Ghost now, her coat a tapestry of gray and tawny. Arya had found her again in the Riverlands wilds. The two direwolves moved like living banners for the north. At dusk on the sixth day, they crossed the ruined bridge of the Trident, where broken stones still jutted like teeth above the water. Jon dismounted, kneeling to touch the river's edge. Here Robert had slain Rhaegar. Here the tides of houses had turned. That battle echoed still in the bones of Westeros. He wondered if the ghosts watched them now, Dragon Prince and Wolf Lord, seeing their children unite. Perhaps even those restless souls could find rest if the council took root. Sansa joined him, cloak billowing, hair catching embers of sunset. "I see Father's face in every ripple," she murmured. "He once told me rivers remember everything." "So does the realm." Jon squeezed her hand. "Then let the realm remember this moment too." At Riverrun's east gate, the portcullis rose, chains clanking, and banners of red trout and blue waterfall pitched forward to greet them. Lord Edmure Tully, grayer but broad-shouldered still, strode through with a grin warm as summer wine. "Nephew," he cried, clasping Jon's arm. "Niece." He nodded to Sansa. His eyes grew soft before turning to Arya, and he bowed in theatrical flourish. "My lady of many titles, I welcome you thrice." Arya snorted. "And I declined them thrice." Yet she smiled. Within the castle walls, courtiers hurried to string rainbow lanterns above the courtyard, though snowflakes still drifted. Squires brushed down horses while cooks ferried hares and venison into steaming kitchens. The scent of sage and onion seeped into the twilight. Jon and his sisters were shown to chambers overlooking the river, where distant torchlight shimmered across black water. The Council of Unity would convene in 2 days, after the last envoys arrived. 2 days to weigh hearts, test trust, and bury doubts deep. Night settled like velvet upon the battlements. Jon walked alone until he reached an empty terrace. Below, torches dotted the lower yard where soldiers laughed and gambled with dice carved from bone. Above, the sky swirled with stars, as though some giant hand had spilled salt across black glass. He breathed deep of cold night. Soft bootsteps approached. He turned to find Daenerys, cloak swirling. The torches caught flecks of amethyst in her eyes. She stood a moment without speaking, hands folded. Finally she said, "Your uncle makes a good host. He has reasons. He sees possibility of trade, and smaller things. He wishes his little Edwin to grow in a realm where tourneys replace war. Do you believe we can give such a realm?" Jon leaned against parapet stone. "I believe we can try. And perhaps that is all history remembers of anyone." Daenerys drew nearer, the scent of smoke and salt around her. From beneath her cloak, she withdrew a small cloth bundle and pressed it into his hands. It weighed almost nothing. He unwrapped it, a white feather, edges blackened at the tip. "Drogon's last," she whispered. "Found among the embers of the throne room when they cleared it." She swallowed. "A piece of fire that survived ruin. Keep it. For luck. For memory." Jon stared at the feather, throat tightening. "I have nothing to give in return." She shook her head. "You already gave the world its final winter. You gave me the chance to be more than vengeance. Keep it." The feather caught starlight, glowing silver. He folded it carefully back in the cloth. "Then let this be the first relic of our council, unspoken though it be. A reminder that even dragons must yield to gentler winds." Daenerys' breath clouded between them. "And wolves can stand in sun." For a heartbeat, the world fell silent, save for distant waves washing at Riverrun's foundations, as though the entire realm paused to witness 2 figures beneath the vault of night. Their shadows, cast by a single torch, touched, parted, touched again as if uncertain how to merge. Then Jon turned. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow," she echoed. The sunrise of the council's first day poured rose gold across the God's Eye and set Riverrun's stone walls ablaze in light. Heralds sounded silver horns as the Dornish retinue rode across the drawbridge. Banners snapping crimson, silk veils in the prince's litter carved like a sunburst, though Doran himself lay absent within. Ariohota led with the tall spear of Nymeria strapped across his back. At his side, Arianne sat astride a golden palfrey, her hair loose, her face unreadable. Sansa pressed a hand to her chest as she saw the spear's blade catch sunlight, and she whispered to Arya, "Do you feel Mother's stories in the air?" Arya's shoulders tensed. "I feel the tension in every bowstring near these towers. Guards watch each other like cats pressed into one basket." Inside the great hall, an oval table of fresh-hewn oak dominated the chamber, large enough for 12 to sit with distance between. Around it, hammered iron candelabras stood in trios, their wicks unlit. A line of braziers breathed warm air. At the table's center, a circular depression had been carved. An empty hearth where, said Edmure, a single flame would burn throughout each council session, a symbol of shared vigilance. The first tree trunk for the hearth sat upright, waiting a torch. Jon, Daenerys, and Arianne entered together. Whispered breath stirred above gathered nobility. Eyes followed like flocks of sparrows. Gendry Baratheon stood among smiths, arms folded. Jon Royce watched from beneath heavy brows. Lady Lyanna Mormont, grown from girl to fierce commander, stayed near the door, jaw set. Daenerys placed Dark Sister upon the table, blade gleaming. Jon set the weirwood wolf, carved intricately by Winterfell's craftsmen, reborn from a fallen heart tree. Beside the sword, its red mouth open in silent howl. Then Arianne stepped forward. Ariohota lowered Nymeria's spear into her hands. She lifted it, point toward the ceiling, and lay it across twin pedestals. 3 relics lay there now. Clay Serwyn murmured, "Ice, fire, and sun, in steel and wood." Davos nodded. A hush thickened. Arianne's gaze traveled the circle, then came to rest on Jon. "We stand at the dawn of something that has never yet existed." Her voice rang clear. "Able where blood matters less than breath, where swords may rest, though their edges remain keen. From this council we will craft laws above houses, above crowns, laws that speak for orphans of war and mothers of famine, who do not sit here but whose voices shall fill these beams." Jon spoke next. "Let this hearth burn so that no hand may hide sharpened steel in shadow. All speak, all hear, none silence another. We are 12, but beyond these walls we are thousands, millions. Today we gather those unseen souls in our circle." Dimnatia. Daenerys placed 2 fingers upon Dark Sister's flat. "I swear this blade will serve peace. Should it ever rise in war again, let it be as last resort when counsel fails, and let any who bear witness remind me of this vow." One by one the seats filled. Sansa at Jon's right, Arianne at Daenerys' left. Lord Davos, Edmure Tully, Gendry Baratheon, Lyanna Mormont, Yara Greyjoy, Jon Royce, and finally Maester Willem, who would record each word. 2 seats remained empty by design. One for the Reach, one for the Stormlands, whose lords had not yet chosen sides in this new era. Let the emptiness remind all of work yet undone. Davos took a torch, lit it, and touched flame to the hearth. Fire flared, dancing gold and crimson. Shadows leapt across 12 faces, mingling, splitting, mingling again as if fated to share their fates henceforth. The Council of Unity began. Hours later, parchment covered the table like fallen leaves. Voices rose, fell, intertwined, sometimes clashing as swords might, but each time subsiding without blood. They spoke of grain levies, of rebuilding the King's Road south of Harrenhal, of a shared fund to compensate families whose homes had become battlegrounds during the wars. Sansa proposed orphan havens staffed by healers taught at the Citadel. Gendry argued for a single coinage to ease trade. Yara pressed for open seas and joint patrols to quell the last of the slavers off Basilisk Isles. Amid heated debate, Arianne rose, speaking of sun and windmills turning in Dornish hills, driving pumps that could water northern farms during dry summers. Jon frowned, unused to the concept of northern drought, yet he listened, reminded that summer too would come again. Late afternoon bled into candlelit dusk. The hall filled with mellow firelight, and the distant rattle of plates as servants set tables for supper. But the council did not break. Hunger pressed, but they argued still, about tax burdens, about whether every lord must send 2 children, 1 heir and 1 spare, to be fostered in other regions as hostages to peace. That old practice tasted bitter to stark tongues. Sansa's voice trembled as she spoke of her own childhood in King's Landing, yet she said, "Still, I survived and learned. Perhaps such exchange in a gentler setting could breed respect instead of resentment." Arya, seated among observers behind Sansa, hissed like a cat. "Or breed spies." Daenerys spoke then, softly but firm. "Children are seeds. Plant them in many soils, and they grow hardy, bending but not breaking, sharing pollen of culture. We may not like the memory, yet consider how those ties saved Meereen when foreign children studied within its walls returned as envoys rather than conquerors." "Biddy, any?" At last Davos slammed his hand upon the wood. "Dade's bells have rung thrice. My stomach snarls louder than dragons. Can we not adjourn until morning?" Jon glanced at Daenerys, then at Arianne. Both nodded. Jon rose. "Let us eat. Tomorrow we continue." Supper in the lesser hall was simpler fare than feast. Root stew, black bread, trout baked with herbs, Dornish red poured by pages. Yet the talk did not cease. Rather it flowed freer in candle glow. Gendry showed Arya a steel cuff he had forged shaped like entwined wolves. Her cheeks colored. Lyanna Mormont challenged Jon Royce to arm wrestling and toppled him to uproarious cheers. Sansa and Arianne compared embroidery patterns, one woven from ice flowers, the other from bright sunbursts, and found they shared identical stitches though learned worlds apart. Daenerys and Jon sat together near the hearth. Flames painted their faces gold. "Do you think we planted good seeds today?" she asked. "Seeds, yes," Jon answered. "But winter soil is stubborn. We will need more than talk to coax sprouts." "Then, actions," she said. "After this council I intend to travel north with you, see the lands beyond the wall as they heal. If I am to help govern a realm of 9 kingdoms, I must know its farthest bones." Jon's brows rose. "Cold, endless waste, little more than wind. And wind shapes dunes, let it shape a queen." He smiled, rare and warm. "You may regret those words when your eyelashes freeze." Her eyes flashed. "I once walked unscathed through the heart of Meereen while sons of the Harpy hunted me. I think I can bear a little frost." Their laughter echoed soft, where once there had been only whispers of suspicion. Across the hall, Arianne watched, chin resting on her fist, eyes calculating. The sight of ice and fire side by side, laughing, meant the realm indeed was changing. She turned to Areo. "Tomorrow," she said beneath the din, "I will propose that the council seat across from me be granted to the Iron Islands if they pledge ships to guard Dornish shipping lanes. See how the wolves howl at that." "No," Areo grunted, expression unreadable. But in his dark eyes, a spark glimmered. Hope or amusement? Possibly both. Night deepened. Torches guttered low. In a tower chamber Jon lay awake, feather of blackened point upon the table beside his bed. Wind rattled shutters. Ghost slept curled at the foot, tail twitching in dream. Jon's mind wandered through corridors of memory, but each path bent now not toward blood but toward possibilities. A realm of wandering festivals crossing borders that once were battle lines, of maesters exchanging tomes of northern sky lore for Dornish star charts, of smiths forging plowshares from melted spearheads. Yet he also saw darker paths, lords plotting within empty seats, sellswards landing under foreign banners, whispers of dragons still restless for conquest, of sandsnakes unborn thirsting for vengeance. Vision blurred between promise and peril. A distant roar sounded, Viserion awakening in the courtyard, wings beating once in night air, echoing across the keep like thunder. Jon rose, wrapping a cloak, and climbed to the ramparts. He found Daenerys there already, hair tossed by wind, hand resting on the dragon's scaled snout. Moonlight silvered both queen and beast. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. He feels unsettled. So do I. The council will succeed only if those outside it believe in its strength. Yet I fear showing strength may look like threat to some. Strength is a tool, Jon said. He stroked by Zyrion's jaw. The dragon exhaled smoke and closed golden eyes. How we wield it will tell the realm what we intend. And if we falter, then we learn, like any council, any family. Daenerys turned to him, expression open. Family, she echoed. What is a family forged by counsel, not by blood? Jon looked out across the starlit river. A choice, he said. A vow. Perhaps stronger than blood, because one chooses. Her breath shimmered in cold air. Then let us choose. He met her gaze. Fire and ice, reflected in twin sets of eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to hold still, the night itself waiting to hear what choice they might speak. But words were not needed. Side by side they watched the river flow beneath moonlight, water that remembered battle, now carrying broken ice downstream toward sea, as though endless war might at last be melting. Bit by bit, under shared guard of wolf, dragon, and sun. Dawn came with storm clouds. A sharp wind whipped banners, and flakes of snow spiraled. Inside the great hall, the council reconvened, hoods drawn tight against chill. Fires crackled, throwing sparks among hanging shields. As each seat filled, Jon noticed 3 new faces among the observers. Lord Willis Tyrell, leaning on a cane carved of ash, Lady Asha Knight singing softly beneath breath, and Edric Storm, grown to youth, eyes bright with curiosity. He leaned to Davos. Stormlands have come. Seat may not remain empty long. Davos scratched his beard. So long as they bring calmer weather than their storms. The morning session opened with Maester scrolls recounting war debts. Voices rose, exasperated. Debate circled like sparrows trapped beneath roof beams. Arianne suggested a tithe on silk. Yara retorted that tithes choke free trade. Sansa proposed graduated levies. Gendry argued numbers hammered on anvil, not quill. Yet even in tension, a new pattern grew. Each objection ended not with a slammed fist, but with a question. Why? How? What if? Around midday a horn sounded from the courtyard. The doors swung wide, cold wind swirling in, and 3 riders entered in cloaks of black, trimmed with red and gold. Their leader bore a gilded scroll and bowed low to the council. Lords and ladies, I bring word from Sunspear. His Highness Doran Nymeros Martell, Prince of Dorne, is dead. Gasps rippled. Arianne's eyes widened, then hardened diamond bright. She stood, steady yet pale. How? Peacefully, my princess, the messenger said. He passed in sleep 2 nights ago, after writing final instructions to be sealed, until you should assume the crown. Silence choked the hall. The hearth fire popped. Arianne's lips parted. She closed them, swallowed. Then I am princess, she said, voice distant. She looked at the spear of Nymeria upon the table, and heir to a purpose larger than 1 crown. She straightened, shoulders squared. The council of unity shall endure. My father willed it. Jon rose. We share your grief. The North pledges aid in Doran's mourning. Daenerys bowed her head. The dragons carry your sorrow. Arianne's gaze flicked to each relic. My father feared his death might fracture this newborn alliance. Yet his last words to me were clear. Burn not in vengeance. Shine in vigilance. I will honor them. But know this, Dorne no longer offers ships and gold as gift. Now we pledge our full army, our full coffers, to this council. For I will not have my father's dream crumble to dust. No was oftened. Murmurs stirred. Seats shifted. Lyanna Mormont slammed her fist. Then the North stands with the sun. Yara barked a laugh. Sun and snow make slush that. Yet even she grinned. The tension eased into something like solidarity. Arianne lowered herself to her seat again. We continue. In the days that followed, grief for Prince Doran wove itself into council deliberations, tempering edge with reflection. Edmure organized a silent vigil on the battlements, Dornish soldiers stood torchlit, and northerners joined them, snow in their beards. Songs were sung in whisper. The Ballad of the Prince of Promise, a tale of sun guiding a broken kingdom. The council drafted charters, reparations for riverfolk, joint grain reserves, rotas of healers to travel region to region. They set quorums. They argued length of terms. They debated how many votes could overturn a decree. Some nights they fell into bed too weary for dreams, only to wake before dawn and begin anew. Yet with each signed parchment, the empty chapter of a new era wrote itself, line by deliberate line. And beyond Riverrun's walls, word spread. Small folk in villages lit candles in windows when they heard of sun and wolf and dragon speaking as one. In taverns minstrels sang of the 12 fires, each verse changing but refrain steady. Told by sword and shield and sun, council speaks and war is done. Skeptics scoffed, but their scoffs often ended softer than they began. Inside the hall, there remained hazards. A pack of Sellswords camped near the twins, waiting to see if any warlord might hire them. Ironborn rebels raided the Fair Isle seeking plunder. The faith militant regained whispers of influence. The council addressed each with measured voice, negotiating trade concessions for the Sellswords so they might settle as guards of caravans. Dispatching a joint fleet under Yara's command to quell raiders, inviting the High Septon to send officiants to oversee orphan havens, tying faith to the council's cause. Yet not all threats wore open faces. One evening, Arya found a raven dead upon her windowsill, its eyes gouged out, a thin iron coin clutched in its claws. She recognized the mark of the faceless men. When she told Jon, he frowned. Old debts, he guessed. Or warnings. Daenerys, overheard. Assassins thrive when leaders gather. We must not let fear silence us. Arya cleaned the coin and slipped it into her pouch. Let them come, she said. I learned more than faces in Bravos. Spring crept nearer, though snow still flurried. On the 40th day of the council sitting, the last empty seat was filled. Willis Tyrell, accepted on behalf of the Reach, oath sworn upon his cane. Edric Storm remained observer, but eyes gleamed with ambition. The charter now spanned 24 scrolls sealed in beeswax and ribbon. That night, as casks of arbor gold were cracked and cups raised to charter's completion, a final matter arose. Maester Willem cleared his throat. "And the throne," he said. Silence. For though the council wielded power, a question lingered always. Who, if anyone, would wear the Iron Throne, now melted, reforged into the council's brazier, but whose symbolism haunted the realm? Daenerys, once queen acclaimed, had left Dragonstow's dais empty. Jon had refused northern kinship. Sansa ruled Winterfell as lady, not queen. The realm walked uncrowned. Jon looked to Daenerys, she to him. Arianne watched. Willis leaned forward. Finally Daenerys spoke. "The throne is dead metal." She gestured to the hearth where the old blades glowed red among coals. "Let its fire warm, not wound. If a crown is needed, let it be 12 crowns woven into one circlet, worn only during council sessions, by no single head, past each meeting to the one who opens the floor." A murmur rose. Gendry grinned. "I can forge such a thing. 12 bands of equal width joined in ring, each band marked by sigil of its house." Jon nodded slowly. "In that way the crown weighs upon all of us." Jon Royce stroked his beard. "Some lords will bristle without one man to blame or follow." "Then let them learn to bristle," Arianne said sharply. "The old ways salted our fields with bones. New ways may yet seed wheat." By night's end they agreed, a circlet of 12. Gendry would begin forging at dawn. No single monarch. Instead the council would rule, and the realm would watch 12 faces turn the crown, year by year, meeting by meeting, like seasons of a single year. As the first thaw began, snow melting into shining rivulets along stone, Jon rode out beyond Riverrun's gates, with Daenerys and Arianne to walk among small folk tents that had sprouted like mushrooms near the castle. Refugees and farmers had come seeking work rebuilding roads. Tradesmen sold candied apples, dolls shaped like direwolves and dragons, tiny sun spears carved of driftwood. Children chased each other through mud, shrieking with delight at the sight of direwolves padding alongside their owners. An old woman tugged Joan's cloak. "Am lord and lady," she croaked, eyes bright as polished jet. She thrust forward a bundle of cloth. Within lay a loaf of sweetbread shaped like a ring. "For your counsel," she said, "so all may break and share." Jon thanked her. "Move." He handed the bread to Daenerys, who bowed her head. Then he drew coin and offered payment. The woman shook her head fiercely. "Price has been paid." Later, around the council table, they broke that bread into 12 pieces. Arianne held hers aloft. "To the realm we hope to serve." 12 hope, 1 realm, echoed voices. They ate, feeling crust crumble upon tongues, tasting spice of cinnamon and mace. A simple meal, yet in it lay more ceremony than any coronation. But peace is a field always coveted by crows. On the eve of the council's 7th week, a clear night jeweled by stars, 20 riders in gold, half-plate bearing the sigil of a manticore crossed the ford. At their head rode Sir Quentyn Hightower, face pale, eyes hard. He demanded entry with warrant signed by his cousin Lord Lytton, a decree that House Hightower refused any charter that bound Oldtown to pay levies set by a council they deemed illegitimate. He asked that the relics be surrendered as collateral while terms were revisited. Else, he would call banners of the Shield Islands and march. Word of this reached the council at midnight. Sansa gathered them in the small solar. Jon paced. Daenerys studied the warrant. Arianne's fingers tapped Nymeria's spear. "They seek to blackmail us," Yara said. "Or test us," Davos mused. "See if we stand united." Daenerys looked to Jon. "A message must be given," she said, voice like desert dusk. "But not with dragons, not first." Jon nodded. "You trust me to speak?" "I trust you to guard the light." Dawn's first pale wash painted the courtyard platinum as Jon walked to meet Sir Quentyn. Ghost strode beside him. Nymeria trotted behind with Arya. Jon wore no crown, no armor, only wolfskin cloak and swordlong at hip. Sir Quentyn dismounted. His armor shone too bright for that hour. He bowed. "Lord Snow." "Jon will do." He accepted the offered parchment, unread. He had studied it all night. "You question our right to levy. You question the council's legitimacy." "I question any rule that crowns itself by committee," Quentyn said carefully. "Oldtown has parchments older than this castle. Tradition guides us." "Tradition guided Westeros into 20 years of fire," Jon said. "Is that enough guiding?" "You slew your queen to end that war," Quentyn snapped. Jon's eyes hardened. "She stands alive within these walls. Speak truer before wolves." Quentyn paled, realizing rumor had misled him. "Yet dragons still." "Yes, dragons still. But they sleep. And swords still. But they rest. This council is chance to keep them sleeping. Oldtown's knowledge should understand that more than any. Send a maester to join us, take a seat, weigh our charters. Or walk away. But do not threaten. Manticore stings draw dragonfire. Menem Sanasiu. Quentyn's gaze flicked to Ghost and Nymeria, to archers along walls. He bowed again. "I will ride for Oldtown. I will counsel caution." Jon inclined his head. "And take this." He handed the parchment back with one amendment in fresh ink. An invitation for House Hightower to claim the 13th seat once they ratified charter. Tradition evolves. Help us shape its new form. Quentyn read, lips tightening. He saluted, remounted. Snow dusted his helm as he wheeled, and his riders trotted away through dawn mist. That evening, the council reconvened. Jon recounted the exchange sparsely. Arianne smiled. "You offered them the 13th star. Clever. For superstitious minds fear odd numbers." Sansa laid a hand on Jon's arm. "You choose generosity before threat. Father would be proud." Daenerys nodded. "The council's strength grows not from dragons' roar, but from hearts that resist roaring." Yet in shadows behind the council seats a slender figure watched. Arya, eyes narrowed. She slipped away, silent as new snow, to follow ravens that gathered upon the tower. Something restless stirred in her gut. Not fear. Expectation. She felt the tremor of a knife before it finds flesh. The council had survived one challenge. Others would come, subtler, more poisonous. She would be ready. Beneath the godswood of River Run. A sapling transplanted from Winterfell's own. Nurtured to remind the riverfolk of northern roots, Jon knelt at dusk, candle guttering beside him. Leaves whispered of changes. Snowdrops sprouted at roots, delicate white heads daring the chill. He closed his eyes and breathed, hearing Bran's voice across miles of dark forest. You chose your heading. Yes, Jon whispered. But the wind may still turn. Bran's voice echoed soft. Then adjust your sail. Jon opened his eyes. The candle's flame bent under breeze, yet it did not die. The next weeks blurred, parchments signed, votes tallied, messengers dispatched. Small folk festivals sprouted like wildflowers around the keep. Scribes laboriously copied the Charter of Unity into leather-bound volumes to be sent to each major city. Gendry completed the circlet. 12 bands interlinked, each etched with sigil and motto, bright as morning sun. At the council's final session they passed it hand to hand, each lord and lady feeling its weight, then placed it upon the central plinth where it would rest between gatherings. Daenerys concluded proceedings. This council is built, its stones laid, but a keep stands only if its lords return. Twice yearly we shall meet, at harvest, at thaw, rotating among keeps of each house. Let our presence remind every region that unity walks among them. All agreed. The charter was sealed with wax imprinted by dragon, wolf, and sun. Trumpets sounded. Outside, villagers cheered as the council emerged. Banners of gray, red, gold, blue, green lined the square. Children threw handfuls of petals, winter roses, sun blossoms, dragon's breath lilies. Snow mingled with flowers in the air, swirling colors. Jon raised a hand. Silence fell. We are your servants, he called, voice carrying over stone. Hold us to our oaths. Daenerys stepped forward. A new page turns, written by many hands. Guard it. Arianne lifted her spear, point to sky. Let its ink never fade. Crowd roared. Bells tolled. The Council of Unity was born in flower and snow. Yet every birth is but dawn, not day. In far corners of Westeros, rumors spun. That the council would crumble beneath ego. That dragons would seize crowns. That spies of Korth courted ironborn captains. In a dark hall of Casterly Rock, a lion lord plotted, brushing dust from golden armor. In the stepstones, Selsale kings waved new banners. And across the narrow sea, an exiled prince of the Blackfyre bloodline read reports with hungry eyes, his hand stroking the pommel of a sword, forged in the shadow of old Valyria. Within Riverrun, however, fires burned bright. Laughter filled chambers where once echoes of weeping had lingered. On the terrace, Jon watched Daenerys dance with children to a Dornish lute, her face free of sorrow for a heartbeat. Sansa planned an orphan feast. Arya sharpened knives yet smiled. Gendry hammered nails for a stage where minstrels would perform the Ballad of 12 Crowns. The world outside still turned sharp, but inside these walls an ember glowed. And so the council's first chapter closed, leaving its quill poised above unwritten parchment. The next lines would carry triumph, betrayal, passion, and peril, but that was the burden of all stories worth telling. For now wolf, dragon, and sun stood side by side as dusk settled into calm. And for one fragile moment, Westeros exhaled peace, uncertain how long it might last, yet breathing it deeply all the same. Soft spring rain drifted across River Run in thin veils, washing the last petals of the festival from cobblestones, and leaving the air scented with damp earth and bruised wild mint. Jon Snow rose before dawn as was his habit, fastening the wolf clasp at his throat, while Ghost circled his boots in languid arcs. The keep lay hushed silent, save for a scullion kindling banked coals in the lower hearths. He paused at an arrow slit to watch the river pulse bronze under clouded light, and for a moment the weight of quiet felt stranger than any clamor of war. Peace, he thought, was the rarest music, too delicate for careless fingers. He wondered who might still be reaching to mute it. When he reached the small council solar, he found Arya already there, cross-legged on the table, playing a private game of knives. 8 slender blades, some Dornish steel, 1 Bravosi, danced in deliberate pattern between her fingers. The slightest slip would cost blood, yet her hands moved like water. She did not look up when he entered but said, "2 riders left before dawn, cloaked and silent. Hightower men, unless I miss my guess." A blade flipped, caught, tipped again. They carried no banners, yet their horses bore the same shaved fetlock. Old Town's farriers marked them that way. Jon pulled a chair and sat. Quentin's message returned only yesterday. Perhaps his lords grow impatient. Or someone else borrows their sigil. She halted the dance, all blades snapping upright on their tips, perfectly still. Assassin's hire disguises the way singers hire new songs. I smelled vinegar on the men's cloaks. Bravosi apothecaries cure leather that way. Jon's brow furrowed. You think the faceless are moving? I know they are moving. Arya's gray eyes were colder than the stone beneath her. She tugged a thin coin on a leather cord from beneath her jerkin, and let it spin. They mailed this to me, a tithe unpaid, they say. He recognized the iron coin, face stamped with a hooded skull. You owe them. I outgrew them, she answered, slipping the coin away, and they charge interest on the past. Her gaze cut to him like sudden steel. They will strike where legend gains most coin. A queen, or a prince, perhaps the wolf who would not be king. Killing you 2 at once would line purses for 5 lifetimes. They had been tossed. Jon felt the ghosting of old wounds along his ribs. Then we set traps before they spring. He rose, calling a guard through the door. Double sentries on every gallery. Passphrase changes at dusk and dawn. Any raven leaving the rookery without my seal is grounded. Arya slid from the table, sheathing her knives so quietly the leather seemed to sigh. Traps alone won't suffice. We need lures. She patted Ghost's flank. The direwolf rumbled approval. I'll take 2 shadows and wear a better one. Let them hunt what they think is prey. No. Before Jon could object, she was gone. Boots whispering over rushes, swallowed by arch corridors. Ghost followed, tail a pale flag. Jon exhaled hard, tasting iron memory. Peace indeed made strange music. Too brittle, too fine. He feared how quickly one false note could shatter all. Daenerys Targaryen found the Dragonstone Pavilion strangely small when Dawn's horn sounded 3 days later. The pavilion had been pitched inside River Run's outer yard, its black silk sides stamped with silver dragons. Its interior smelled of salt water and old incense from the temple at Meereen. She cinched a cloak of gray moleskin over scaled riding leathers, then opened the tent flap to river breezes and soft drizzle. Viserion crouched nearby, dew shining along his ivory back, wings furled with practiced calm. Rhaegal roosted on the far rampart, an emerald gargoyle watching crows. Missandei approached with parchment rolls bound in lilac ribbon. Sail manifest, your grace. The galleys depart at noon with relief grain for the fingers as you asked. Vandy. Thank you. Daenerys read each roll, initialed in flowing Valyrian script. Bureaucracy tasted dry but necessary. She handed them back. Have Ser Jorah file 1 copy in the Citadel archives. Missandei hesitated. Your Grace, the Citadel archives lie in Old Town. Daenerys paused, then smiled ruefully. Habit. Send them to Maester Willem's scriptorium instead. She touched her aide's arm. And rest. You have not left your inkpot since midday. I will rest on the voyage north. Missandei's smile was soft. Salt air is good for weary parchment minds. North. The word still brought a child's thrill. Daenerys had never seen the Shadow Tower, or tasted iceberries plucked from frost-rimmed shrubs. She imagined endless tundra beneath sheets of light, like the dancing aurora she had glimpsed over Skagos. Yet deeper than wonder ran purpose. To watch the free folk rebuild, to learn their songs, and treat them not as subjects, but as neighbors. Jon joined her near the stables at first bell. A travel column waited. 80 guards in black and silver, 2 maesters, a dozen wildling volunteers, who would guide the column beyond the wall. Rations loaded on 6 wagons, fresh blades wrapped in oiled linen, barrels of sour leaf to trade for mammoth pelts. Jon carried a satchel of ravens to loose along the road. Rain darkened his hair, making it jet against pale, scarred cheek. He offered Daenerys the reins of a gray mare. She's sure-footed on ice. Gendry shod her with dragon-glass nails. Old superstition, but it can't harm. Daenerys swung into saddle. Superstition preserved more lives than steel some days. She watched as Jon mounted beside her. Their eyes met over steaming breath. No words were needed. He turned and raised a gloved hand. Horns sounded. The column rolled east under fluttering banners of wolf and dragon intertwined by a ring of 12 stars. The first banner of unity ever flown beyond castle walls. Riverrun's gates closed behind them with quiet groan, like a chapter pressed flat between pages. Far atop a Merlin Arya watched, hood shadowing her face, ghost at her knee. The white wolf stared after his master, but Arya's gaze scanned rooftops, alleys, door arches. She held a coin between thumb and forefinger, flipping it through knuckles as though tickling fate. Somewhere in the wet morning she felt eyes answering her own. Miles south, heat shimmered across Dornish sand. Arianne Martell stood on the tower of the sun's highest gallery, arms bare to the burn, spear of Nymeria laid across her shoulders like a yoke she bore gladly. Below, banners bearing the blazing sun lowered and lifted in choreographed waves as captains drilled new recruits, archers in desert buff, spearmen in lacquered scales, cavalry leading slender sand steeds. Her father's funeral pyre had smoldered down to sacred glass weeks past, yet she still smelled char on night winds. She breathed deep and listened as Ariohota rumbled behind her. Most captains swear swift loyalty. 2 companies grumble of old grievances. She turned. Old grievances dry quicker in sand than in snowed out Hawaii. Let them air their curses, the wind will steal them. But she knew better. Grievances were burrs. Small, invisible, until the wound festered. She would address them before infection spread. Summon the captains at dusk. I will dine with them. No weapon longer than a fruit knife permitted. Ario nodded, beard flecked white now, though his shoulders remained mountains. And your cousin Nemor? Leave him stewing. The corner of her mouth tilted. He expects summons, hopes I fear his following. Let him build bravado until the walls cannot contain it, then collapse under its own weight. Man. She looked eastward, where sunrise painted crags peach. Somewhere beyond mountains, the sea of Dorne lapped quiet coasts. Arianne pictured ships fitted at Boneway ports, 30 sunbursts, trimmed with unity stars, ready to escort grain north and furs south. Trade was diplomacy's bloodstream. But she needed hearts convinced, not merely pockets filled. Inside the tower she knelt beside her father's reading table. Letters lay unopened. Wax bore sigils of far realms. She broke one, black glass stamped with a dragon coiled around a scepter. The seal of distant Volantis. The letter offered credit for 10,000 spears to protect Dornish independence should Western intrigues imperil it. Payable in spice and slave stock. Slave stock. Fury blistered her tongue. She tore the parchment, flung it to brazier fire, and watched flames curl the words. Volantis still dreamed of chains. Dorne would never again be yoked. Yet other letters bore tidings more curious. A Tyrell steward begged audience to negotiate water rights along the Mander. A Braavosi banker offered to underwrite roadworks if repaid in ice wine futures. These she stacked. Investment bred entanglement. Entanglement bred obligation impossible for knives alone to sever. She rose, spear resting easily in hand. Responsibility, she thought, is a blade one cannot sheathe. Like Nymeria's daughters, she wielded points now not to spill blood but to hold worlds in balance. And yet she sensed blood coming, or she would not taste iron on each night wind. Far across rolling plains, beyond the last farms loyal to the twins, the King's Road narrowed into ruts through abandoned villages reclaimed by Briar. Joan's column wound north in steady silence, broken only by a clop of hooves and rasping breath of horses. Half a day outside Maidenpool, Snow gave way to frost-dusted grass. A small folk settlement emerged. Houses patched with sailcloth. Smoke trickling from stone-ringed pits. When scouts signaled clear, Jon rode ahead with Daenerys and Sir Davos. Children gathered, gap-toothed and wide-eyed, at sight of dragons circling high. An old woman limped forward, offering a lopsided basket of hen's eggs. Jon dismounted, knelt to her. "We ask nothing of you," he said. "Save eggs for supper." The woman shook her grizzled head. "Eggs for peace, my lord. I seen enough winters when eggs were taken by force. Take amen honest and we'll remember." Daenerys crouched, shifting cloak aside to reveal a pouch of dried figs. She traded quietly and pressed the basket into a girl's arms. More villagers approached. Soon hams and turnips exchanged for salt and lamp oil from the wagons. No coin, only barter. Jon's men distributed broadleaf seed for spring sowing. Daenerys helped hitch a broken gate. The moment spun hours longer than it truly was, an economy of simple give and take, far removed from charters and scrolling. As they rode away at dusk, Missandei remarked, "Little things cost least yet mean most." "Little things build walls stronger than stone," Davos said. "And stone falls slower than crowns." They traveled through night under a vault of clear stars. Rhaegal's shadow swept overhead now and again, trailing echoes of wind. At dawn, the distant shell of Moat Cailin loomed, broken towers ghostly in river mist. Jon felt history stir. Ironborn screams, northern arrows blackening sky, his own boots crunching mud as men died for ground only ravens desired. He halted the column by the ruined gatehouse. Davos asked, "You'll camp inside?" "Just long enough," Jon said. He dismounted, hands trailing moss-slick stone. This moat kept the north free since the first men. It should serve unity now. He envisioned a garrison of mixed banners. Ironborn, Riverlord, Dornish, each watch relieved by another realm. Let Moat Cailin become a bridge, not fort. But first they must clear the rot. He summoned 2 engineers from the wagons, set them measuring wall thickness and gate pivot. By noon, sketches rolled into message tubes bound for River Run. Request for labor crews, river barges carrying limestone. Daenerys watched, lips curved, then teased. "Building keeps suits you better than breaking them." "I am tired of breaking." He handed her a parchment. "Draw your mark with mine." 2 signatures speed the quarrymaster's hands. She signed. Rain-dappled ink bled into parchment, forming an accidental flower at the edge. She smiled at it. Strange symbol of partnership. Then she looked north. Over horizon, forests marched endless. Somewhere beyond waited the wall, or what remained of it. Arya's hunt began in the cellars beneath River Run, where sour wine seeped through cracked casks, and spiders wove pearl-gray hammocks. She moved soundless, lamp shuttered to a pinhole. Guest lists rolled in her mind. 36 lords, 41 ladies, 119 guards, 24 cooks, 14 stable hands, 23 traveling mummers. Mummers, she knew, were masks by vocation. Within them could hide any face. She tailed one troop nightly, watching as they rehearsed dumb shows in a barn. Stiff gestures mocking kings and sparrows, harmless enough. Yet a certain dwarf juggler kept vanishing between acts, and a tall pennywhistle girl wore gloves even while eating. Gloves cover scars, Arya thought, or missing fingerprints. She followed the girl through rain-dark corridors to an unused chapel. Through cracked door she saw the girl kneel before a cloth-wrapped bundle. Knives again, small, curved, oiled black. The pennywhistle lay beside them, hollow just wide enough to hide a slug of pale poison. Arya stepped inside, blade drawn. "Slip mist, is it? Kills in 3 breaths if blown over wine." The girl froze. Gloves. Flexed. In her eyes flared recognition, not of Arya's face perhaps, but of her posture. A Braavosi stance taught in shadows. She whispered, "Cat of the canals." Arya inclined her head, pleased the legend had traveled. Once, never again. She kicked the bundle. "Who pays?" "The many-faced god," the girl answered. "Names arise. We serve." "Serve blindly?" Arya circled, feet light, blade reflecting candle stub. You were told naught of politics? Politics are motes on the mirror of truth. A dogma reply. Arya sighed. Then know this. I have purchased the names you carry. They are null. Impossible. Nothing is impossible to a girl with two faces. Arya flipped her coin. It caught candlelight. Recognition widened the girl's eyes. Uncertainty cracked conviction. By rule the coin outranked any contract. But rules bent in distant kingdoms. A gamble. The penny-whistle assassin regarded the coin. Then Arya. Slowly she bowed. A debt. Go, Arya said. Leave now. Cross the green fork before dawn. If I find you this side by next moon, I feed your face to ghost. The girl gathered weapons, slid past like smoke. Arya listened until steps faded. Then she breathed. The threat would not end. Others would come. But she had bought hours, days perhaps. Enough for the council to entrench. She pocketed the poison flasks. A gift for Maester Willem's study. Climbing stairwells to pale evening, she reached rooftop and let rain wash sweat away. Ghost appeared from shadows, brushing her leg. She scratched his ears, whispering, Tell John I keep my vows. Ghost huffed, as if knowing. He trotted to rampart edge and stared north. Arya followed his gaze, wondering how far her brother had traveled, whether he felt her warning tug the same blood thread. Wind shifted, carrying faint cry of ravens. She shivered despite spring's softness. Casterly rocks under halls echoed with empty decadence. Gold torches marked passages lined in red marble, but few courtiers walked them now. Many had died or fled in wars, others languished on impoverished estates. Yet Lady Cyrell Lannister paced the Sea Lion Gallery with restless poise, wine-red mantle brushing gilded tiles. She studied a table scattered with scrolls and trade routes, each parchment pinned by a golden lion weight. Opposite her stood Maester Kyle, former tutor to Jamis Squires, now a thin reed of a man with spectacles like beetle shells. Council tariffs squeeze us, my lady. Port fees at Lannisport rise to fund orphan havens. Merchants grumble. Done. Shirelle traced a finger over a line of red quills. Barley shipments diverted to river-run storehouses. Grumbling breeds opportunity. If the rock cannot undermine charter openly, we erode it quietly. She tapped a parchment. Contact the Mirish Syndicate. Offer warehouse space exempt from council levy. Smugglers will fill gaps faster than taxmen. Kyle adjusted spectacles. Such alliances court retaliation. Retaliation requires proof. Shirelle lifted another scroll, bearing green ink scrawl. The Blackfire Pretender seeks coin for sell-sale fleets. We provide loan at matching interest, payable in loyalty. She smiled cat-like. Let dragon bastards chew at dragon queens. The rock remains behind thick walls. Kyle hesitated. Prince Daeron claims 9 parts rumor, 1 part steel. A rumor sharpened can/throats. She poured arbor red into goblet, sipped. We need but fan coals until they spark. The council births hope. Hope turns to despair when princes burn fields again. Then houses will crawl to Lannister halls for shelter. Her gold eyes glinted. And I will choose who enters. Thunder rolled beyond shuttered windows. Shirelle raised her glass toward lightning's distant glow. Let storms gather. Lions hunt best in uproar. On the 15th morning since leaving River Run, Joan's caravan approached Castle Black, or what remained. Frosty wind sliced ears. Even Daenerys pulled hood close. The great gate lay broken, half buried in drifts. Ragged palisades jutted like rotten teeth. Yet beyond, new timbers rose, fresh-cut pine frameworks crawling with workers, wildlings, Night's Watch veterans, a handful of northern masons. Smoke curled from chimneys of patched barracks. Tormund Giantsbane strode out, beard furious orange against white world. His booming laughter carried across courtyard. Crow King returns, and brings the dragon queen he once skewered. He smacked Jon's back, made Daenerys grin despite cold. Jon clasped forearms. Thought you'd be raiding my larders, Tormund. Not with all this grain you keep sending. Makes my men soft as summer peaches. Tormund eyed Daenerys. You came north for a wedding bed. We got mammoth hides. Warm. Daenerys laughed. I came north to see snow that doesn't melt at my feet. Tormund stroked beard. Well, make yourself at home then. Plenty of snow for all. He gestured toward new ramparts. We hammer stone each day. Raise walls higher than before. Free folk like the idea of a gate we control. Keep southern lords from snooping. Jon surveyed progress, pride stirring. Children in furs hauled stones with rope, singing bawdy songs. Women sharpened spearheads forged from scavenged iron. Melting ice dripped through broken crenels, yet hope gleamed in every eye. He turned to Daenerys. This is why I came. To show you what unity looks like at edge of the world. Dander. She nodded, stepping through snow. Inside the rebuilt hall, she warmed hands at hearth where giant elk racks hung seasoning. Free folk chieftains gathered, curious. Jon introduced her, not as queen but as council's envoy. Mugs of pine ale passed around. Conversation flowed between languages, Tormund translating with flair and exaggeration. Silver Hair Queen says, sheep south o' wall grow woollier than your sorry beards. Laughter roared. Daenerys accepted jest, retorted in halting old tongue she had practiced with Missandei. Cheers rattled rafters. That night she climbed to what remained of the Lord Commander's tower. From there, the wall's jagged skeleton stretched east and west, pale under moon, broken where dragonfire had felled it. Yet even mutilated it remained colossal. She traced a hand along ice. Memory of Drogon's flames surged. Heat, rage, grief. She bowed her head whispering, forgive the wound. Wind moaned between shards. Jon found her there, cloak billowing. The wall stood too long, he said quietly. It caged men as much as it defended them. I unmade a cage, but I broke more than I knew. She looked at him, eyes luminous in starlight. Will people ever forgive? Some already have. The rest will learn your true measure in time. She faced north. Endless dark forest waited. What threats linger? None living. Jon's gaze hardened. But absence breeds myth. If people believe dead walkers may rise again, they heed caution. We rebuild not just walls, but caution itself. Daenerys breathed deep, frost sweeping lungs. Then let this place become a beacon, not barrier. A school for watchmen of every realm. Rotate companies here, teach them wildling lore. Let them trade stories under same roof. The Night's Watch reborn as Knights Brotherhood. Ednan. Jon pondered, smile ghosting. A fortress of learning. Maesters will faint. Let them. She gripped his arm. Help me draft the charter. In the tower's silence, they shaped paragraphs by spoken word. Outside, snow whispered over ruins, blanketing past scars with fresh hope. Above, aurora sheets unfurled green and violet, draping the vault like banners of unseen gods. Back at River Run, Maester Willem dipped quill into jar of slipmist antidote, scribbled tests of dilution. The poison vials Arya delivered fascinated him. He had never seen such refined distillate. Candles burned low as he recorded color change, absorption rates on parchment. His apprentice yawned. Bed, Thomas. Willem murmured without looking up. Dream of safer potions. Left alone, Willem corked the vials, locked them inside iron coffer. He stretched aching fingers and glanced out arrow slit. Rain pattered lightly. Thoughts drifted to letters from Old Town. Some scholars eager to join council clinics, others decrying heretical politics. The citadel fractured quietly. He feared knowledge might become a weapon as sharp as any sword. Footsteps echoed down corridor. He expected Arya perhaps, but the figure that entered wore hooded scholars, robe trimmed with gold. Face hidden. Up. The night grows thin, Willem said, rising. May I? A letter slid toward him. The hooded one spoke in soft, sexless voice, from Archmaester Bros. For your eyes alone. Gloved fingers withdrew. Willem broke seal, scanned lines. His heart thudded. Abros wrote of a stolen copy of the Dragon Skull prophecies. An obscure Valyrian text once guarded in black vaults. It foretold 3 flames born to break and bind, a prophecy zealots might twist to crown or butcher. The copy missing since the sack of King's Landing had resurfaced. Rumor placed it now in hands of a sell-sail captain bound for Pentos, seeking patron named Sorel of the West. Willem swallowed. He raised eyes, but the courier was gone as silently as arrived. He read again, candle trembling. Words of prophecy had lit wildfires before. The bleeding star, Azor Ahai reborn. The council must know. He sealed a summary for Jon and Daenerys, but they were north. Ravens flew slower than rumor. He dispatched birds anyway, then sought Sansa's chamber at once. Sansa listened in candlelit hush, hands folding and unfolding in lap. If Sorel Lannister wields prophecy, she can sway fearful lords. She stood, pace measured, gown whispering across rug. We answer fear with truth. Publish prophecies ourselves. Annotated, disarmed. Willem blinked. Publish? Sacred texts. They? Secrets and power schemers, she said. Sunlight starves them. We will hold forum on prophecy. Summon seers, maesters, septons. Debate openly. Let small folk watch by torchlight. Willem's mind raced. A heresy tribunal? A lesson in literacy, she corrected. The realm must learn to read before it kneels to tales. She touched his sleeve. Write invitations. I will provide parchment. As Willem hurried away, Sansa turned to window. Somewhere beyond wet night, bells tolled matins. She whispered, Father, teach me patience. Mother, lend courage. Rain answered soft. Ashore at Sunspear, the dusk tide revealed a lone coracle drifting under broken sail. Fishermen hauled it in, found 2 men inside. One dead of arrow wound, the other feverish, muttering in guttural dialect. They carried the living man to the tower infirmary. When Arianne arrived, he clutched her wrist in delirium, babbling of storms at stepstones where black sails marked with twin tridents chased their vessel. Company of 9, he gasped, eyes rolling. Black fire gold buys every sword. The new king beneath the mountain waits. He convulsed. Maesters bound him with linen steeped in ghost grass. Arianne watched his twitching lips. Black fire again. The dead prince's echo, bred in shadows. She sent ravens north at once. To Arya Stark, to Lady Sansa, to Maester Willem. The message was spare. Black sails gather, stepstones aflame. Caution your seas. Then, she closed herself in her father's old solar and studied maps. She drew a thin red line from Tyrosh to Fair Isle, another west toward Windermere, and a third north to White Harbor. The lines converged like spears aimed at heart of Westeros. She thought of her cousins buried, of Nymeria crossing seas with 10,000 ships. History, she knew, repeated because men preferred echoes to silence. She touched spearhead to her brow. Not this time. She summoned Ario. Ready 20 sand skiffs. We sail at moonrise. We'll cut raiders before they land. He bowed. She caught his arm. And send word to the council I will arrive late for summer session. I'm off to slay ghosts. In Castle Black's rebuilt library, Daenerys leafed brittle parchments catalogued by surviving stewards. She found tally lists of dragonglass daggers Jon once mined at Dragonstone, rosters of free folk allied in final war, a half-burned journal of Maester Aemon. But one fragment snagged her eye. A map of Valyria sketched by a doomed sailor, notating vents of fire still belching from sea. At margin, a note in faded ink. 3 secrets sleep in Baharish. Wake them not. Borash lay dead in smoking sea. Even dragons feared its fumes. Yet she marked it with charcoal. Knowledge unopened rusted. She would send it to Willem. Jon entered. Snow-dusting shoulders, face flushed from drill field where he sparred youths. He saw a map. Frowned. Trouble. Possibility. She rolled parchment. Secrets tempt, but we guard curiosity with caution. He studied her. Admiration soft in eyes. You sound like a maester. She brushed hair from cheek. Leadership teaches many tongues. She handed him a letter just arrived from Riverrun. Sansa script quick, urgent. He scanned. Face tightening. Prophecy stolen. Lannisters stirring. A sigh. There are always storms. Then we sail them. She gripped his gloved hand. Unity means we share ore. Above them, the wall's ragged crown caught morning sun, turning cracked ice into radiant shards. Jon felt warmth despite chill. He pictured the council chamber alive with debate. Seas shielded by Dornish skiffs. Wildlings teaching maesters how to track elk. Prophecy, pirates, assassins, storms indeed. But even storms fed rivers, nourished fields. He squeezed Daenerys' hand. We will keep rowing whatever waves come. Night fell behind Crimson Aurora when Arya stood again at Riverrun's parapet, cloak snapping. Below, 2 new caravans trundled into Torchlit Yard. Tyrell wagons, heavy with fallow seed, and Tarly scouts bearing bastards leap venison. Allies answered call faster than foes plotted. She let wind whip hair free, breathed deep. She felt Jon's presence distant, but steady, as if their hearts were joined by unseen cord. A raven fluttered down, landing on Crenel with soft croak. A message tube hung at its leg bearing seal of the Knight's Brotherhood. Jon's new sigil. Crossed torches over Crescent Wall. She opened it. Assassins thwarted. Wall rebuilding. Children laugh in frost. Wish you here. She smiled, folded parchment, tucked it near her pulse. Ghost emerged beside her, silent. She stroked his fur. Soon, she whispered, after I sweep more shadows. Below, bells rang first watch. Across yard, Maester Willem hoisted lantern, escorting scholars from arrivist houses to dormitories. Sansa, inside solar, planned prophecy, forum. Arianne on distant sea, hunted black sails. Jon and Daenerys forged brotherhood in snow. Threads of unity stretched across a once shattered realm, fragile yet glimmering. Arya looked east where thunderclouds gathered violet. She drew a dagger, tested edge against thumb. Let storms come, she said to darkness. The council is learning to dance in rain. She slipped into shadows, ghost silent at heel, as rain began to fall with patient rhythm on stones that remembered war and now dared, at last, to hum a softer song. E-A. Dawn broke raw and red above the frosted pines and ragged remains of the wall, painting the snows around Castle black, a pale gold that could not banish the chill. Jon Snow stood at the highest point where a man could walk, wind cutting through his furs, watching 36 free folk children chase a ram along the half-frozen yard below. Their laughter clattered against stone and wood, filling the ruin with an energy the Night's Watch had never known. And behind their wild games, the rebuilt ramparts were alive with purpose. Wildlings, Night's Watchmen and Northmen from as far as Deepwood moth-hauled stones dug ditches, sang bawdy songs as they mended the keep. On the other side of the yard, Daenerys stood by the new forge, watching Gendry direct a cluster of blacksmiths. The ring of hammer on anvil was as rhythmic and steady as a heartbeat. And above it all, Rhaegal's distant shadow swept over the treetops in wide, lazy arcs. Jon's thoughts were broken by the arrival of Soren, a young boy from the Gift, breathless and red-faced from running. Riders on the King's Road, he gasped. 3 banners, umber, reed, and a new one. A sun and 12 stars. Your council's flag, lord. They'll be here by midday. Ew. Jon ruffled the boy's hair and sent him off for warm bread. His gaze lingered north. The sight of unity coming to the wall felt as strange and momentous as the dawn after the long night. At the foot of the tower, Daenerys met him as he strode down the steps, wind tangling her silver hair, cheeks pink from cold. They bring answers, she said softly, voice barely a whisper. Or more questions? Both, Jon answered. There's no peace without trouble at its heels. The best we do is meet it together. He felt her gloved hand slide into his, a gesture unguarded. She smiled, thin but true, and together they made their way toward the gate. On the wall walk above, Tormund Giantsbane barked orders and jokes in equal measure, Orangebeard blowing wild, and below, The first crows of morning settled among the ravens, pecking at scattered grain. It was a day for omens. The riders arrived at noon, cloaks heavy with frost, horses snorting clouds of steam. The umber banner, a roaring giant, rode in front, but the green and brown reeds of House Reed and the Unity Sun and Stars flew beside it. From the center rode Mira Reed, lean and sharp-eyed as ever, her black hair pulled tight behind her head. With her rode Mors Umber, twice the size of any two men, his beard thick with icicles, and at their flank was a woman of perhaps 30, olive-skinned and high-cheekboned, wearing the new sigil on her chest, a sun ringed by 12 silver stars. Jon recognized her by reputation, if not by face. Sahara Sand, Arianna's cousin, sent north to seal bonds with her own voice and spear. Jon welcomed them in the yard, with Daenerys beside him and Gendry at his back. Ghost prowled between their legs, tail brushing the snow. Mira dismounted first, face split by a grin. I see the tales were true. A wall rebuilt, and wildlings chasing sheep in daylight. If my father lived to see it, he'd call it a miracle or a madman's dream. Jon clapped her arm. We'll make miracles commonplace before we're through. Mors Umber snorted, spitting into the snow. Got word from last hearth. Sea raiders hit the coast. 2 ships burned, children taken. Not ironborn, black sails. No kraken marks. Thought you'd want it heard by all. His blunt voice was full of cold iron. We've bolted every door from White Knife to Bear Isle. Sahara Sand met Jon's gaze with a searching look. My princess sends warning. Stepstones bleed, and the Blackfire Cell's words move north. Dornish skiffs have run 4 blockade lines, but they buy more blades each week. She extended a scroll. Arianne's hand. She sails with 10 ships to bottle them at Fair Isle, but asks the council to send aid. She does not trust the Lannisters to guard the western coast. Daenerys broke the seal and scanned the scroll. 10,000 men, at least, if the numbers are true. Blackfire gold and Lannister loans. If they land at Old Town, the south will burn. And why? Jon nodded. Then we ride south as soon as we finish here. We'll bring the North's best and call the council to meet us on the march. Castle Black will not fall again, but the new threat is in the west. Mira, you will remain as warden here. Gendry, you'll see to supplies. Tormund, hold the gates until we return. Gendry, you'll see to supplies. Tormund, hold the gates until we return. Orders spread swiftly. The council's banner was raised over the ramparts. That night, in the long hall, Jon and Daenerys shared a table with their guests. Mead flowed. Wildling music clattered from a drum and a battered harp. Mira Reed swapped tales of bog devils with Tormund, while Sahara quizzed Gendry about dragonglass, steel, and shipbuilding. The north and the south, the free folk and the lords, the dragon and the wolf. There was laughter, suspicion, longing, and a strange undercurrent of hope. When the candles guttered low, Daenerys and Jon lingered by the fire. She spoke first, voice rough with thought. Every step we take away from Dragonstone, away from the Iron Throne, I feel lighter. I never wanted to rule alone. Let others wear the crown, together or not at all. Mr. Mar. Jon stared into the embers. That's the only way this endures. If they see us bleed, see us struggle and trust, maybe the realm will too. If we stumble, he reached for her hand, calloused palm covering hers. We stumble together. She squeezed back, and rise the same way. Word spread faster than horse or raven. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman manderly read the council's call and summoned his banners, sending his youngest son to command 200 knights. At Gulltown, the Arryns pledged 20 galleys to patrol the eastern coast. Even in distant Sunspear, Arianne's fleet set sail, bearing fresh warriors and sand-skinned archers, ready to die far from home if it meant no new war in the south. In Old Town, the High Septon summoned his most devout, debating whether prophecy or counsel should shape the realm's future, while Lady Sorrel Lannister hosted midnight meetings with Blackfire envoys and Myrish merchants, her golden hair a beacon and a warning. At Riverrun, Sansa Stark held court with Edmure Tully and Lady Lyanna Mormont. fielding questions from nervous riverlords. A few bristled at Dornish or Reachman taking command in their lands, but most bent to her will, drawn by the clarity of her words and the weight of her name. In the cool of evening, Arya drifted between shadows, listening, learning, reminding herself of old skills. How to vanish, how to watch unseen. She caught wind of a plot among lesser lords to undermine the council's orphanage plan, to siphon funds for their own coffers, and within days the plot was exposed. The lords shamed, the coin reclaimed. Fear of the faceless wolf grew, but so did respect. Atop the high tower, Maester Willem prepared for Sansa's prophecy forum. Ravens flew to every keep and holdfast with invitations, promising safety and audience for any who brought a scroll, dream, or tale of omens. Willem prayed that light would not breed more shadow. But the alternative, secrets festering, was far worse. Jon, Daenerys, Meera, Sihara, and 300 northern riders cut south from the wall, the columns winding like black threads across the green hills and flowered vales. Wildlings and Northmen marched together. Reed and Umber scouts ranged far ahead. On the third day, just north of the neck, they found a hamlet razed. Walls blackened, smoke still drifting from a collapsed barn. A boy of 12 staggered from the ashes, clutching a carved wooden wolf. Jon knelt, wrapped the boy in his own cloak, and listened as he stammered a single word: black sails. The boy spoke of shadowy men, foreign voices, a flag with three-headed dragon in gold and black. Blackfire's old colors. He spoke of women taken, fields burned, cattle slaughtered for spite. When Jon looked to Daenerys, her jaw was clenched tight, fury banked but burning. That night Jon gathered the captains beneath an old ash tree. The wind moaned through the branches, carrying the stink of char. The war never left us, he said. It changed shape, wore new faces, but it waits for us to forget. We ride to end it before it can spread. Sihara, you'll go ahead with Reed's scouts. Send warning to Ariane's fleet. We follow at dawn? In her tent, Denry's unrolled maps, marking each report of burned villages and missing children. Rhaegal slept nearby, his breathing slow and deep. She paused over the western coast, tracing a line from Fair Isle to Old Town and up the Mander. The council's fate, she thought, would be decided not by scroll or speech, but by what they did next, how they stood together or fell apart. As she sat there, Arya's raven arrived. A quick note of warning, describing the poison plot, the traitorous lords in River Run, the presence of faceless men. Daenerys read and reread the words, then burned the note, letting the smoke drift through the slit in the canvas ceiling. For every threat in the open, she thought, 3 more moved in shadow. At Fair Isle, Arianne Martell's fleet cut through churning seas. 30 skiffs flanked by the larger warships Sundancer and Dornish Wind. The deck was slick beneath her boots, salt spray stinging her cheeks. Areo-Hotah towered at her side, eyes fixed on the horizon. On the third night out, their lookouts spied a dozen ships with black sails slipping from the west. No banners at first, but as moonlight broke the clouds, the Blackfire sigil gleamed gold and dark. 3-headed dragon, swords crossed beneath. The enemy ships moved in silence, oars muffled. But the Dorn signal mirrors flashed. Warning ready. Arianne's voice was calm as she ordered lanterns doused. We hold position. Let them come. She trusted the night and the currents. When the first arrow arced from the dark, she did not flinch. Her crew fired back, flaming pitch, sand-soaked javelins. In the chaos, Areo-Hotah led a boarding party, cutting through cell sails with silent, efficient violence. By sunrise, 3 enemy ships burned, another 4 fled, and 2 more were taken, full of terrified, half-starved mercenaries who surrendered without a fight. Arianne stood at the prow as the sun rose, blood and salt on her face. She raised Nymeria's spear and called, "For the council!" Her captains echoed the cry. The Blackfire threat was not ended, but the message was clear. Dorne would not yield, nor would unity be broken at sea. She wrote the report herself, sealing it with the new sun and stars. "Let all the realm know," she wrote, "that unity stands at the water's edge. We await aid. Tell the north the sun rides with them." Neyral. South and west, at Casterly Rock, Lady Sorrel Lannister heard the news with a thin smile. She stood at her tower window, golden hair unbound, hands folded over a letter from the Myrish Syndicate. "They have teeth, these Dornish girls," she mused, voice like silk and steel. "But gold and patience are stronger still." Below her, in the hidden council chamber, Blackfire envoys plotted. Sorrel watched their shadows flicker by torchlight. "Let them fight," she whispered. "Let them bleed the coast. When they grow tired, when the realm is weary, the Rock will offer peace on Lannister terms. And if the Blackfires win—" She shrugged, her smile sharp as glass. "The Rock will survive, as it always has." At River Run, the Prophecy Forum began with fanfare. Maester Willem stood at the dais, flanked by Sansa and Edmure, as nobles, septons, hedge wizards, and crones filled the hall. Scrolls and talismans littered every table, and every corner hummed with whispered tales. Of dragons in the east, of red stars, of wolves who walked in dreams. Sansa opened the session with steady voice. "We are not afraid of knowledge," she declared. "We do not tremble at shadows or kneel to fear. Let each voice be heard, each tale tested by the light. The council stands as guardian, not of crowns or prophecy, but of the living realm." Debate raged for days. Some claimed Daenerys was Azor Ahai. Others whispered Jon was the Wolf King reborn. Still others warned the Blackfire banner was the true fulfillment of old Valyrian omens. The Faith argued, the Maesters reasoned, and the small folk listened, first with awe, then with skepticism, then with laughter. As Sansa hoped, the mystery became less weapon, more puzzle. One night, Arya stood among the crowd, hood shadowing her face, listening to a Braavosi seer mutter of 3 flames, one for life, one for death, one for love. She felt the words flicker inside her, but she let them pass. The only truth she trusted was in the steel she carried in the eyes of her family. When the forum closed, Willem compiled the tales, publishing them as a bound book. The Songs of Unity. Sansa read the first copy by candlelight, smiling at the last line, her own edition. "We do not kneel to prophecy, nor to fear. We kneel to each other, as kin and neighbors. And that is enough." Then today, the council met at Seaguard, a new site chosen to answer the western threat. Jon, Daenerys, Arya, Sansa, Gendry, and Mira arrived within a week, the wind off the bay whipping their cloaks. Lords of the Riverlands, Reach and Vale joined them. Dornish captains arrived by skiff, battered but undefeated. Arianne herself rode north from Fair Isle with a small retinue, sun-dark skin gleaming, Nymeria's spear still red from battle. They assembled in the new council hall, once the great hall of House Mallister, now refitted with the 12-pointed table, the circlet of crowns and the relics. Weirwood Wolf, Nymeria's spear, dark sister laid across a stand of blackwood. Sunlight poured through high windows, dazzling and clean. Jon called the meeting to order. His voice was hard as river stone. "We face open war in the west. The Blackfire fleet is scattered, but more will come. Lady Sorrel plays both sides, seeking to profit from bloodshed. We must not break, or all we've built will be ashes." "None." Arianne spoke next, recounting the battle at sea. She asked for men, ships, and gold. "Dorne will give what we can, but unity is more than banners and words. It is action." Gendry pledged ships from Storm's End, Mira volunteers from the Neck, Sansa a levy of river knights. Arya spoke softly, but her words cut deep. "We have traitors among us. Every house has old grudges, but if we let them fester, the Blackfires win without lifting a sword." Daenerys rose last. "No single house can carry the realm. We must share the burden and the risk. We fight together or fall apart. And when the war is done, we keep our promise. No throne, no king, but a council. 12 voices, 1 realm." Nimnawai. The council voted by torchlight, the flames flickering on steel and stone. All agreed. A joint army would march west. Arianne would lead the fleet. Jon and Daenerys would ride at the head of the vanguard. Sansa, Edmure, and Gendry would govern in their absence, with Arya as the council's shadow. moving where needed, striking where danger festered. That night, as the council dispersed, Jon walked the battlements with Daenerys. The sea crashed below, the air thick with salt and hope. "We may not win," he said quietly, "but we will not be broken." Daenerys took his hand, her fingers steady. "We are more than banners and swords. We are the hope that comes after war, the stubborn seed that grows in bloodied earth." They stood together as night fell, the stars burning above like the 12 sigils of their new realm. And for a moment, the world was silent, balanced on the edge of possibility. The campaign westward was swift, furious, and merciless. Jon led the vanguard along the coast, Daenerys flying regal above, dragons shadowing every column. Dornish ships drove the last Blackfire raiders from the Isles, pinning them between river and sea. The first great battle came outside Casey, where Blackfire mercenaries tried to break the unity line. For 3 days and nights, the field was chaos. Ironborn and Reachmen, River Knights and Dornish archers, free folk in patchwork mail. Arya slipped through the dark, striking down 3 Blackfire captains before dawn. Gendry's Stormlanders drove the enemy from the fords. Mira's marshmen harried the flanks. When the sun rose on the 4th day, Jon raised the wolf and dragon banner above a field strewn with broken swords and fallen men. Syrell Lannister watched from Casterly Rock as her plans unraveled. Gold could not buy loyalty from men who saw a chance for peace. The Mirish Syndicate withdrew its loans. The Blackfire envoys were found poisoned. Arya's coin, left on the table beside their bodies, sent a message no one missed. By midsummer, the Blackfire threat was ended. The last sail sails surrendered to the Dornish fleet at the mouth of the Mander, begging for quarter. The council convened once more at River Run, battered but unbroken. In the quiet that followed, the realm began to heal. Roads were repaired, fields replanted, orphan havens filled with laughter. The Prophecy Forum continued, now a festival, not a debate. Maesters published new books. Wildling songs mingled with the old. Trade blossomed, new ships sailed, and for the first time in a century, no banners flew at war. In the Great Hall, the council sat in full. Sansa passed the circlet of crowns to Jon, who placed it on the table before all. "We are not kings or queens. We are guardians. Let the realm judge us by our actions, not our blood." Arianne, Gendry, Arya, Daenerys, Mira, and the others echoed the vow. The relics, wolf, spear, sword, remained on display, no longer as threats, but as symbols of promise. In the Godswood, Jon and Daenerys walked together beneath the boughs, Ghost at their side, sunlight dappling through the leaves. "We have done the impossible," Daenerys whispered. "We have made peace with our ghosts." Jon looked skyward, where Rhaegal circled lazily above the towers. "Peace is not an end. It is a beginning." They walked on, past the heart tree, where names old and new were carved in the bark. The wind stirred, carrying scents of grass, salt, and wood smoke, promise, memory, hope. The realm breathed with them, battered but alive. The song of unity growing with each step, as bright and perilous as spring after a long, hard winter. And so the council endured, season after season. Lords rose and fell, banners faded and were renewed. But the Circle of 12 held, proof that even in a land scarred by blood and fire, something new could grow, if only enough hands held the line, and enough hearts refused to let go. Rain fell for 3 days over River Run, silver strings turning the banners limp and dull, and sending muddy torrents swirling through the wards. The standing stones at the river's edge, old markers set down by Tully hands centuries before, vanished beneath the rising waters, and the townfolk grumbled about drowned barley, ruined thatch, and the way every year seemed to find a new trouble to test them. But inside the keep, the council endured, 12 voices gathering each dawn in the long hall, with its high arched windows shrouded in gray. Jon Snow came early, as always, his boots wet and hair beaded with mist, nodding greetings to the night guards and pausing to check the watch ledger. The page was signed by a dozen hands. Reed, Royce, Baratheon, Mormont, Tully, Martell, and others, each vouching that their hour had passed without alarm, each name a small knot in the rope that bound the realm together. Jon ran his thumb over Sansa's precise signature and Arya's jagged mark, and felt the old ache of the North rise in him, tempered now by something steadier and quieter. It was not joy, exactly, nor relief. It was more like faith, reluctant, battered. But growing each day, he saw the new order hold. Sansa met him outside the council chamber, her hair woven up in river pearls, eyes sharper than frost. "I sent a rider north," she murmured, voice low enough to be mistaken for a prayer. "House Glover asks for grain in exchange for timber. White Harbor needs masons to rebuild the old docks before winter. Lord Reed is ready to send his watermen, but they ask for assurances. Safe passage, no forced service, no taxes levied without consent. Every promise breeds a dozen more demand." She looked up at him, almost smiling. "But every promise kept is another stone in the bridge." Jon smiled back, the gesture more natural than it once had been. Bridges are harder to burn than towers. He opened the door for her, and together they entered the council hall. Inside, Arya lounged against a windowsill, watching the river foam and toss. Gendry, newly named Lord of Storm's End, traced lines on a map with a thick, blackened finger, his eyes moving from the reach to the coast, then to the clusters of dots marking new villages. Lyanna Mormont argued with Jan Royce about the best way to train green boys from the Vale. Her voice, small but fierce, carried through the hall. Arianne Martell arrived trailing rain and the scent of orange oil, her cloak spotted with water, her hair loose and wild. She pressed a scroll into Daenerys' hands, their heads bending close in quiet talk, while Davos and Edmure Tully compared notes on grain shipments. The table was round, set with 12 carved chairs, and at its center stood the relics. The weirwood wolf, its snout stained from the hands that touched it for luck. Nymeria's spear, point bright and clean. Dark Sister, gleaming in its sheath of red leather. Above them, the circlet of crowns rested on a plinth. 12 bands of gold and steel, each etched with the sigil of a house. No single head wore it. Instead, it turned with the seasons, passed from hand to hand. Daenerys opened the session with a nod. "We've received word from Sunspear. The Blackfire fleet is scattered. Some fled to the Stepstones, some captured. Arianne has secured Fair Isle with the help of Tarly and Manderley ships. No major losses, but the prisoners say more gold flows from Myr. Sorel Lannister plays a long game, still courting Cell Sails, but her support wanes." She glanced around, her expression grave. "It will not be the last threat. But the realm has seen our answer. Unity holds." Gendry raised a thick brow. "And how long before the next sellsword army lands? The Reach is rich, but restless. The Golden Grove lords already mutter about new taxes." "Ner," Davos grunted. "Let them mutter. If they saw the Blackfire banners in their own fields, they'd sing a different song. But muttering's better than marching." Sahara Sand, now seated for Dorne, spread her hands. "We must offer them a share in the peace. My cousin Arianne suggests a council of lesser lords, a gathering each spring to speak grievances and vote on local laws. Give them a voice, and they'll have less reason to rebel." Lyanna scowled. "Or more chances to plot. I'd sooner trust a direwolf with my dinner." "And so," Jan Royce smiled, "a rare and wry thing. If the council works for the great houses, why not for the lesser? Stones laid wide bear the weight more evenly. I'd back the plan." Arya rolled her eyes. "As long as someone keeps a knife under the table." Laughter rippled, even from Daenerys, who shook her head. "We keep peace with eyes open. The realm is a patchwork. Better to bind it with knots than swords." Sansa brought the discussion to order, her tone soft but insistent. "We must make the council mean something for the smallest folk. They pay the price of every war. Let's send healers, teachers, builders. Not just taxes and commands. If the people see us, not just our banners, the council will last." Maw. Jon listened as proposals flew. Traveling justices, new fair markets at the crossroads, scholarships for orphan children to the Citadel, and the Songmasters' halls in White Harbor. By midday, a dozen measures were agreed upon and written out for the maesters to seal. Each signature felt heavier than the last. But in the heaviness there was progress, and in progress, the fragile strength of trust. After the council, John walked with Daenerys through the cloistered gardens behind the keep, where roses and marigolds twisted through the ironwork. They moved in silence for a while, listening to the distant rain, the rush of the swollen river, and the laughter of children from the kitchen. Rhaegal circled above, a dark shape against the clouds, silent as shadow. Daenerys paused near a patch of drenched violets. I had dreams, as a girl, of riding dragons and wearing crowns, of being loved and feared and followed. Dreams sharper than swords. I never dreamed of this, of lists and ledgers, quarrels about grain, or sending letters to healers and lords. But it feels more real than any throne I sat on. She knelt to touch a violet, its head drooping with rain. John knelt beside her, the ground cold through his furs. The dreams of power fade, but the dream of peace, when it grows, it changes you. I thought I would die on the wall, or on a battlefield. I never thought I'd spend my days drafting treaties, but here we are. She smiled, lifting her face to the mist. Here we are. He took her hand, lacing their fingers. For a moment, the world shrank to the wet petals, the warmth of her skin, the gentle pulse of hope. Rain pattered through the roses. John leaned forward and pressed his brow to hers, and in that breath, the storm seemed distant. That evening, Arya rode out from River Run alone, ghost trailing in the gloom. She followed the twisting river, passing abandoned watchtowers and the charred remains of old camps. The country still scarred from years of war, but the fields were greening, the hedgerows full of birds, and everywhere she passed, she saw signs of life returning. Shepherd boys racing stick horses, old women weaving baskets in the rain, children calling to each other across muddy lanes. At dusk, she came to a village, no more than a cluster of huts and a sagging sept. A crowd had gathered beneath the eaves, listening to a ragged bard singing a new song. One aria recognized as the Ballad of 12 Crowns, verses changing from town to town, but always returning to the refrain. Not king nor queen, but kin. Not crown nor sword, but bond. A girl with a fox mask danced around the fire, and a boy juggled apples and clay marbles. Arya smiled, settling among the onlookers, content to be a shadow. Afterward, a crone with a twisted staff approached her. "You are the wolf who walks unseen," she rasped, eyes milky. "You have shadows at your back and 1,000 names in your pouch. The realm remembers you, Arya Stark. But what name do you claim now?" Arya considered. "Just Arya. The world is full of ghosts. I'd rather be someone living." The crone nodded, teeth flashing. "A wise choice. The living eat and laugh and grieve. Ghosts only linger. Tell your kin, the realm begins to hope." Ghost licked the crone's hand, then melted into the shadows as the rain slowed to a whisper. Days turned to weeks. The council sat each day, hammering out the next year's laws. Ships arrived from White Harbor, bringing salt and dried fish for the storm-battered villages of the Vale. Wildling traders came from the Wall, offering furs and rare herbs in exchange for plows and copper pans. A southern maester arrived with scrolls on crop rotation, another with letters from the Citadel offering apprenticeships to any youth of the realm, regardless of birth. Each small victory stitched the wounds of the past, though sometimes the seams threatened to split. Arguments flared, over river tolls, over who would fund repairs to the bridge of ships, over whether wildlings should be allowed to settle in the rich lands of the Trident. Gendry clashed with Royce, Lyanna with Arianne, Arya with nearly everyone. But no one drew steel, and every quarrel ended with a grudging hand on the shoulder, a joke, a shared cup. River Run rang with voices, not screams. One night, Sansa sat with Edmure in the dim-lit solar, the hour late, and the fire down to coals. "Do you think it can last?" she asked, her voice barely more than breath. Edmure shrugged. "Nothing lasts forever. But if we can leave the realm a little better for those who come after, if the children remember more songs than sorrows, then that's enough." Sansa nodded. She thought of her mother, her brothers, her own long road, and felt the ache in her bones ease. It is enough. Far south, in the sun-washed halls of Sunspear, Ariane Martell oversaw the feast of returning. Her captains dined with sailors from Old Town, Tyrosh, and the Summer Isles. Every wall was hung with banners: sunburst, trout, wolf, dragon, and the new ring of 12 stars. The food was simple: oranges, spiced lamb, flatbreads, strong wine. Musicians played the new council's anthem. Ariane herself danced with Ariohata, then with Sahara, then with 3 children orphaned by war, whirling them around until their laughter echoed off the marble column. Afterward, as the stars rose over the water gardens, she sat with her cousin by the fountain, feet bare and skirts pulled up. "They asked me to marry a Tyrell, you know," she said, smiling over her cup. "To seal the reach, but I said no. Let there be 1 year at least, when no marriage is made for politics. Let peace be peace." Sahara grinned, splashing her toes. "I would marry a fisherman, if it meant no more blood spilled, or no one at all." Ariane tilted her head. "Perhaps that's the secret. Not every alliance needs ink and rings. Some only need laughter and bread, and the sound of children running." The peace in Sunspear, like the peace in River Run, felt fragile, woven from laughter, stubbornness, and hope. Summer advanced. Harvests ripened. The north sent apples and potatoes south, the reach wheat and honey, the vale sheep and wool. Dorne's oranges found their way into Winterfell's kitchens for the first time in living memory. Trade guilds flourished. At Old Town, Lady Sorrel Lannister found her agents increasingly isolated as the council's rules grew harder to evade. She retreated behind her walls, plotting quietly, but her influence waned. In the free cities, the Blackfire exiles faded into rumor, their banners seen only in merchants' tales and old soldiers' nightmares. The sell-sales who once followed their gold now took contracts to guard trading cogs and grain convoys, the promise of steady coin more appealing than another lost war. The Prophecy Forum at River Run became an annual festival. Singers, dreamers, and scholars brought riddles and omens, but the council judged all with humor and skepticism. "We do not fear prophecy," Maester Willem declared, "for we write our own future, one law at a time." Sansa presided over the debates. Daenerys read tales from the east, Arya judged a contest of riddles, and Jon himself recited the story of the long night, omitting no horrors, but ending on hope. The people remembered. The children grew. Ghosts remained, old wounds, old grudges, but the living outnumbered the dead. In the first frost of autumn, Jon stood with Daenerys on the parapets of River Run, watching the mists swirl above the river. Rhaegal circled above, his shadow a promise and a warning both. The council's banners flapped in the breeze, 12 sigils, 1 realm. Below, Arya sparred with Lyanna Mormont on the practice yard, both grinning through split lips. Sansa directed workers unloading grain at the docks. Gendry helped a boy repair a broken wheel, hands black with grease. Daenerys leaned into Jon, voice low and full of wonder. "This is the future I never dared hope for. Not perfect, not easy, but ours. Made with hands, not swords." Jon nodded, silent for a long time. "I used to think the world was made of walls and battles. Now I see it's built on bridges and bargains. And love, in ways I never imagined." She smiled, slipping her arm around his waist. "The world changes, Jon Snow. Let's make sure we change with it." That night, the council gathered one last time before winter's approach. The fire burned high, casting shadows on the faces around the table. Daenerys rose, lifting the circlet of crowns, her voice ringing out. "We began in war and blood. We stand now in peace, not because we are stronger or wiser than those who came before, but because we chose to be kin, not kings. The world will test us again, but we will answer as one." "No, in." Jon took the circlet from her hands and set it on the table. Each member touched it in turn. Ariane, Sihara, Arya, Sansa, Gendry, Lyanna, Jon, Edmure, Davos. Each vow renewing the fragile, stubborn dream of unity. Outside, Rain had ceased. The moon broke through clouds, silvering the river and shining on the banners of every house. From the walls, the people watched the council descend into the courtyard, arm in arm. There were no swords drawn, no cries for blood. Only the soft sound of laughter, the hum of hope, and the promise, unwritten but understood, that together they would hold the realm, come what may. And so, in the heart of Westeros, the council's light burned on, not as a blaze of war or a flicker of prophecy, but as a steady flame, a beacon for those who remembered the darkness, and a promise for those who would never know it. And in the thin hour before dawn, when only the kitchen fires burned, and the mist lay heavy over the Tully weirs, Sansa Stark found herself walking the battlements of River Run alone. She wore a plain wool cloak, the fur-lined hood drawn over her red gold hair, and in her hands was a bundle of petitions and ledgers, tied with ribbon. Below her, the river glimmered with eddies of moonlight, the last drops of rain sliding off mossy stones and trickling toward the open gates. Somewhere out in the dark, a barge creaked, laden with cider for Seaguard. Farther downriver, she could hear the muted jangle of a fisherman's bells, and in the yard behind her, the first shouts of the stable boys waking to their chores. She paused at a crenelle and rested her bundle on the parapet, looking out. Over the last months, the keep had transformed. Fresh timber patched the rooflines. The fish market bustled. The inner yard overflowed with wagons carrying rye and beans from as far as Old Town. The old garrison barracks, rebuilt by a team of wildling carpenters and riverfolk masons, now housed not soldiers but orphaned children, learning their letters and tradecraft beneath the watchful eyes of retired septas and former squires. Even the godswood, once little more than tangled brush, bloomed with wild flowers and curling vines. Sansa smiled, a small private thing, and let her hand rest atop the stone. For the first time since her girlhood, she could imagine the world turning quietly, without fear, for a while. Footsteps sounded behind her, brisk and sure, and a moment later Arya joined her, boots sloshing mud onto the stone, hair tangled by the wind. She leaned against the parapet with her usual cat-like poise, the hilt of needle just visible at her hip, and peered out at the dawn. "Couldn't sleep?" Arya asked, her tone half teasing, half knowing. Sansa shook her head. "The ledgers breed like rabbits. Each day brings more. Petitions for seed, requests for masons, reports from the north and Dorne. I never understood before how many hands it takes to hold the realm together." Arya's lips twitched. "You'd rather be chasing outlaws in the woods?" Sansa gave her a sidelong glance, not without affection. "If I did, who would mind the books? Or scold Lord Tarly when he forgets to pay his porters?" Arya grinned and turned back to the river. "The world needs both, wolves for the woods and shepherds for the flocks. Still, I envy you your patience. I only have it for shadows." The two stood in companionable silence, the breeze playing at their cloaks, until Sansa spoke again, voice softer. "Do you ever regret it? Not leaving for Bravos, not chasing the wind?" "Bill." Arya shook her head, almost shy. "Sometimes. But I think the realm needs me more here. I keep the shadows away from you and Jon and Daenerys. There are still knives in the dark, even now. But I like seeing the sun rise too. Even in a world of peace, wolves don't sleep for long." They shared a laugh, easy and old as childhood, and for a heartbeat all the hurt and distance between them seemed to vanish. Arya reached over and, in a rare gesture, squeezed Sansa's hand. "Come on," she said. "Let's see what Gendry's ruined in the forges today. Or maybe Lyanna's browbeaten another 3 squires into joining her shield wall." Sansa picked up her bundle, and together they descended the winding stair, the dawn brightening behind them, promising another day. Jon Snow woke later, after a restless night of reading and writing, to find Daenerys already gone from their shared chambers. He washed and dressed in the simple manner of the North, fastening a wolf pin at his collar, and made his way to the training yard, where he found her with Rhaegal. The dragon stretched lazily in the grass beyond the walls, steam rising from his nostrils as he yawned. Children clustered at a safe distance, their eyes wide with awe, while Daenerys stood at Rhaegal's shoulder, hand pressed to the warm green scales. She was speaking softly to a half-dozen lads and lasses, answering their bold, tremulous questions about dragonfire, flight, and how a queen came to live in a land of snow and rivers. Jon stood for a moment watching her, struck anew by the strangeness and rightness of it all. The Dragon Queen, whose rage had once broken the world, now teaching riverfolk children the difference between courage and foolishness. Rhaegal, sensing his approach, turned a golden eye, then snorted, sending a gust of sulfur and sweet hay into the air. Daenerys beckoned Jon to her side. "Tell them," she said, "how you found Ghost in the snow." Jon knelt so the smallest could see him and told the story, simple and unembellished, of a wolf pup half dead in the cold, of a boy who'd never meant to be a leader, of choosing to keep the run no one else would claim. "Ghost taught me," he finished, "that loyalty and love can be fiercer than fire or steel. If you care for something, protect it. That's all." The children nodded solemnly, and Daenerys smiled at him, the kind of smile that carried through cold and war, and all the years that waited. Rhaegal rumbled, content, and the children scattered, chattering about wolves and dragons and queens. Daenerys took Jon's hand as they walked back to the keep. "You still don't believe you're meant for this, do you?" Jon glanced sideways. Meant for what? Parades and stories? Or balancing ledgers and answering every lord's demand? All of it. The hard parts and the small mercies. They see you, Jon. They trust you. Even the ones who never trusted a wolf. He shook his head, not denying, not quite agreeing. "I trust the council. And I trust you. That's enough." Now, that day the council gathered again, this time in the solar overlooking the river, with windows open to the damp breeze. Arianne Martell wore sun-yellow silks, her mood brighter than the weather. Sahara Sand flanked her, quill poised above parchment, ready to record. Davos Seaworth and Edmure Tully compared tallies from the granaries, arguing about the best way to store barley against damp and rot. Jon Royce had brought 2 young squires from the Vale, presenting them to Sansa for apprenticeship at the new courts. Gendry's hands were bandaged from a forging mishap, but he grinned through the pain as he described his latest experiment. Ackles of Dornish bronze, lighter than iron, to be tested on the next trading wagons. Lyanna Mormont spoke with the confidence of a commander twice her age, describing her reforms to the Watch, including new patrols along the main roads to drive off bandits and reassure the small folk. Arya lingered near the window, occasionally slipping out and back in, eyes sharp, ears open for news or rumor. She carried a letter from the east, word from Braavos that the Iron Bank had accepted the council's new silver coin, bearing 12 stars and no king's likeness. In the free cities, trust was measured in coin, and the new currency traveled faster than any rider. Daenerys presided, voice calm but resolute. Reports from Sunspear confirm the Blackfyre exiles are scattered and in disarray. Tyrell Lannister's attempts to finance new wars have foundered. The cell sails in the Stepstones have been repurposed as escorts for trade. But the wounds of war are slow to heal. The council will maintain its vigilance, especially over the western coast. Lady, Gendry nodded. Storm's End sends ships north every month. There's been no trouble since the spring, but I'd rather meet trouble at sea than in my own fields. Arianne laughed, warm and a little sly. Perhaps we should send Dornish wine instead of spears. The cell sails might forget why they ever fought us. Davos smiled. I'd wager a few casks would calm half the world's woes. But we'll keep our blades sharp, just the same. Nain? Jon listened as the business of the realm unfolded. Judges appointed to new circuits. Funds set aside for orphanages and village smithies. A proposal from Maester Willem for a library in every major keep, sponsored by the council's coffers. Sansa read out the accounts, each line scrutinized and approved. When the session ended, Arya slipped from the hall and returned a few moments later, Ghost padding at her side. She whispered something to Sansa, who nodded, then announced, "There's news from the Riverlands. Old Sir Hoster Goodbrooks passed. His lands are disputed by his 2 surviving sons, each claiming the other was fathered by a different lord." The council groaned, half in amusement, half in resignation. Let them both plead their case in Riverrun's new courts, Daenerys decided, and let them work together on restoring the levees, or forfeit their claim. Sahara recorded the verdict. The day moved on. As autumn deepened, the people of the realm took heart from the council's steadiness. Fairs returned to the towns. Minstrels sang of the wolf and the dragon, of sun and stars, of the time when Westeros chose hope over war. The orphan havens filled with laughter. Merchants from Myre and Bravos came to the docks at Maidenpool and White Harbor, praising the safety of the roads. Even in the shadowed streets of King's Landing, still a city of ruins and slow renewal, the folk told tales of a council with no king, no queen, only guardians chosen for their wisdom. Yet not all was easy. In the hills above Harrenhal, a band of outlaws harried travelers, claiming to fight for a lost Targaryen prince. In the wilder reaches of the Dornish marches, an old feud between Blackmont and Caron threatened to flare anew. The Vale, proud and aloof, balked at sharing their surplus with the storm-damaged villages of the Reach. The council sent envoys, arbitrators, sometimes a stern letter signed by Sansa or Jon, sometimes Arya herself with Ghost at her side. Where words failed, patience prevailed. Where patience wore thin, justice followed. One night, as the first snows dusted the parapets, Arya returned from a journey north, her boots crusted with frost, cheeks red from wind. She found Jon by the fire, a mug of mulled wine in his hand. "Trouble?" he asked. Arya shrugged. "Not much. Only old ghosts. A few bandits hiding in the woods. I told them the old world's gone. They listened." "Metriaspinand." He smiled. "You always did have a way with ghosts." They sat in silence, watching the fire crackle and dance. Outside, the snow fell heavier, shrouding Riverrun in white. At midwinter, the council convened to judge their progress. In the great hall, tapestries glowed in candlelight, and the round table gleamed. Sansa recited the accounts: surplus in grain, deficit in salt, a new road finished through the marshes, 2 orphanages opened, 1 granary collapsed in a flood, but rebuilt before the loss grew dire. Gendry presented a new coin, heavier and more durable. Lyanna Mormont reported a drop in bandit raids. Arya, usually quiet in such moments, recounted her own small victories. The outlaws who surrendered rather than fight, the villagers who welcomed her as a Stark, not a judge. Jon rose last, his voice carrying through the hall. "We have survived another year, together. The realm is still fragile, but it is ours. Every day, we choose peace. We choose to answer with patience, not war. The North and Dorne, the Reach and Riverlands, the free folk and small folk, all have a place at this table. Let no one say we did not try." Nestler. The council voted to renew the Charter of Unity for another 5 years. The circlet of crowns was passed from hand to hand. Outside, the wind howled, but within the hall, the world was warm. As winter faded into the first hopeful green of spring, Daenerys walked alone in the Godswood, thinking of all that had been lost and all that yet might be found. She knelt at the base of the old heart tree, pressed her palm to the gnarled bark, and whispered words in a language older than Valyria. Rhaegal watched from beyond the wall, golden eyes slitted, content. She thought of her children, lost and living, fire and blood. She thought of Jon, stubborn as winter, gentle as new snow. She thought of Arya and Sansa, each strong in her own way, each a sister of her heart. She thought of Gendry and Lyanna and Arianne, of Davos and Edmure and the children who would one day inherit this realm. She thought, finally, of herself. Not as a queen, not as a dragon, but as a woman who had found her purpose in a world remade not by war, but by patience, courage, and hope. And when she rose, brushing the moss from her knees, the sun broke through the clouds and painted the Godswood in light. On the first day of spring, the council gathered for a feast in the open air. Long tables set in the gardens, flowers blooming, musicians playing soft. The people came from city and field, from river and hill. Children raced between the tables, chasing Ghost and Nymeria, who bore their age with pride and grace. Rhaegal dozed on the far hill, a green mountain among green grass, and no one feared his shadow. Sansa and Arya led the opening toast. Gendry poured the wine. Lyanna danced with a half-dozen squires. Daenerys and Jon walked among the people, smiling, listening, learning their stories. As night fell and lanterns glimmered in the boughs, Daenerys stood and spoke. "We have chosen a new path, not of kings and crowns, but of kinship and care. We are not finished. We never will be. But we have given the realm a future. Let us hold to it, together, through every storm and every season." Jon took her hand, and together they led the first dance, the people joining one by one. Arya laughed, wild and free, and Sansa's smile shone brighter than the candles. So the Council of Unity endured, not perfect, not untroubled, but strong in the only way that mattered. The realm, scarred and battered, began to heal. Songs and stories spread, hope blooming in fields where only ashes had lain. And as the spring deepened, and banners of wolf, dragon, sun, and stars fluttered side by side on every breeze, Westeros dreamed a new dream. A land held not by fear, but by hands joined and hearts unbroken. For as long as those who remembered darkness cherished the light. Ni. Late spring pressed warm and green upon the riverlands. By day, swallows dipped over the sparkling waters, and by night, the air hummed with crickets and the soft, far-off bark of a fox in the hedgerows. The fields about River Run ripened under skies unscarred by smoke, the wheat undisturbed by the tramp of soldiers' boots, the towns bustling with the commerce of peace. Within the thick-walled keep, where moss and banners mingled on the stones, the council's work pressed forward, now as much habit as necessity. Dawn found Sansa Stark already at her desk in the solar, long fingers flying across the parchment, a river of letters flowing to every corner of the realm. Invitations for harvest markets, requests for healers, quiet reminders to stubborn lords. Outside her open window, sparrows hopped along the sill, pecking crumbs she'd left beside a faded blue ribbon. A token from her childhood, and a charm she could not bring herself to discard. A gentle tap at the door. She glanced up as Arya slipped in, hair damp and wild, cheeks flushed from a morning run. Needle was strapped across her back, half hidden by a plain gray cloak. "I saw Gendry's men on the eastern road," Arya reported, dropping onto the edge of the table. "3 new wagons, full of iron tools. There's a potter with them, wants to set up shop near the riverbank." Sansa smiled, finishing her line. "Let him. The Potters Guild in Lannisport has sent word they'd welcome the trade, as long as the new coin keeps flowing. Gendry will want to see him first. He's grown very protective of the smiths and tanners." Arya's eyes twinkled. That's the wolf in him. She fished an apple from the fruit bowl and bit into it, juice running down her wrist. "Edmure says they're nearly done repairing the outer wall. He wants to host a feast on the tower when it's finished, for all the folk who labored, lord and cotter alike." She imitated Edmure's deep, earnest voice, and Sansa laughed, the sound lifting the morning. Sansa folded the letter, fixing Arya with a fond but firm look. "Tell Edmure he'll need my approval for the guest list, or we'll run out of bread before the soup is served." Arya saluted, half mocking, half sincere, and vaulted up. "Ghost and I are heading out later. Rumor says there's a red priestess in Maidenpool, stirring up talk about old prophecies. I'll listen in, but I doubt she's trouble. The folk there believe more in grain than in gods these days." "Still, listen closely," Sansa cautioned, the smile fading. "There's always someone ready to twist old fear into new fire." Arya nodded, and for a heartbeat her face sharpened. Not the wild wolf of their childhood, but the wary watcher Sansa had come to rely on. Then she was gone. The apple core tossed to a grateful crow as she vanished into the swirl of voices and footsteps below. As the day unfolded, the council gathered in the great hall. 12 lords and ladies, plus advisors and scribes, banners from every region draping the stone walls. Light streamed in, illuminating the round table where the relics rested. Darksister gleamed in its scabbard. The weirwood wolf's eyes seemed almost to glint with living mischief, and Nymeria's spear cast a slender shadow like a sundial. Jon Snow took his seat between Gendry and Sansa, hair sun-streaked from hours spent overseeing new roadwork north of the Twins. His hands were stained with dirt. His boots tracked river mud across the rushes, a fact he noticed only as Daenerys leaned close and whispered, "Winterfell mud leaves its mark on every hall." He grinned, eyes creasing. "Better mud than blood. I'll take the scolding." Gendry, newly returned from the forges, set a pouch of prototype coins on the table. Copper, silver, gold, and the new Unity mark. 10 from the Vale, stamped with 12 stars. The free cities like it. Merchants say it's honest weight. The gold cloaks in King's Landing have even started refusing old coins without our seal. Davos examined a coin, tossing it from hand to hand. "They'll curse our faces before the year is out, but it keeps the wolves fed and the ships afloat." Nevsten. Arianne Martell draped herself over the next chair, sun gold rings winking on every finger. Dorne's trade with Norvus is up 20%. Citrus and olives for their silks and dye. But I hear whispers that Volantis plots to open the slave markets again. We mustn't let the world forget our watch reaches across the sea. Jan Royce cleared his throat. There's been trouble along the mountains of the moon. Some say it's only rock slides. Others swear the ghosts of the Bloody Gate have returned. My men will ride out with the spring rains. Besir, Lyanna Mormont, barely taller than the table, spoke with the confidence of a war chief. The North's holding steady. Fewer bandits, more free folks settling in the hills. We have our quarrels, but it's words, not blades these days. Daenerys glanced around the table, her gaze bright and unreadable. This is how it should be. Disputes, not wars. Trade, not tribute. If we can hold this a few more years, we may teach the next generation to love peace as their birthright, not their duty. Jon's voice was quieter but firm. Peace is a garden. Every day, someone has to weed it. Bah! The council moved through their business. Markets, roads, river rights, the growing backlog of legal disputes as new courts opened in the Riverlands and Dorne. Sihara Sand kept the minutes, her hand a blur of ink and memory. As noon shadows deepened, a messenger arrived, red-faced and rain-spattered, clutching a sealed scroll. He knelt before Daenerys. "From Oldtown, Your Grace. Urgent." She broke the seal and read, brow furrowing. "Sarelle Lannister has withdrawn her last support from the Free Cities mercenary leagues. The Citadel has voted to send maesters north and east, to heal and not to rule. Oldtown's gates are open to all scholars, freeborn or otherwise." "Man?" Gendry whistled. "That's a sea change." Jon nodded, glancing at Sansa. "Sarelle's isolated. She'll scheme, but she's running out of friends. The Citadel's support is a wind at our back." Sansa pressed her hands together, relief plain on her face. "Let's use it. Maester Willem's project for libraries in every holdfast can begin this summer. No child in Westeros should go unlearned now. Not while the world is being remade." Nay. After the session, Jon and Daenerys walked the ramparts. Rhaegal flew lazy circles over the green fields, his shadow drifting over the silver curves of the tumblestone. Below, teams of masons repaired a crumbling watchtower, and the river bustled with skiffs and barges, banners trailing from every mast. Jon leaned on the parapet, breathing the sweet, moist air. "I never thought I'd see the world like this," he said quietly. "No banners at Wardite. No dead in the streets." "Nah." Daenerys touched his arm, her eyes reflecting both pride and weariness. "It was never just your doing. Or mine. It was all of us, every stubborn, wounded, hopeful soul." "Even so," he murmured, "it's strange to trust it will last." She was silent, considering. "Maybe it won't. But if we set roots deep enough, something will survive. That's enough for me." He nodded, and for a time they stood together, letting the warmth of the day chase away the last chill of memory. South. In Sunspear's water gardens, Arianne Martell sat with Sihara, feet trailing in a tiled pool, the air heady with orange blossoms. Pages of letters spilled from Arianna's lap, correspondence from Norvus, Tyrosh, even distant Qarth. Qarth offers to send a delegation, 2 magisters, 3 camels, and an entire cargo of glass beads. Arianne snorted. All they want is an invitation to the harvest fair and a promise not to tax their ships. Sihara grinned. Let them come. The world is watching the council. Every city that joins the markets is one less turning to Sel's words. This. Arianne tilted her head, thoughtful. If Dorne can trade peace for profit, so can the others. I'd rather count ships and casks of wine than soldiers. A page hurried up with news from the marches. Blackmont and Karen had agreed to arbitration. The old feud cooled for now by the promise of mutual trade. Arianne tossed the note aside with a laugh. Miracles come in all shapes, cousin. North at Castle Black, the Knights' Brotherhood grew. Free folk, Northmen, and even a handful of wildling children learning the old ways and new. Mira Reed visited, bringing fresh seed for the garden plots, and teaching the children the secret of weaving river reeds into baskets, tough as boiled leather. Tormund Giantsbane sent barrels of mead and a rough-hewn table, which John dubbed the High Table of the Wall. Ghost and Nymeria haunted the wild woods, but always returned to the new halls, their howls echoing across snow and stone. Maester Willem arrived late in spring, overseeing the building of the first great library. He taught the free folk their letters, read to them from histories, and began a project to write the story of the Long Night as told by both the Southern Maesters and the Wildlings' own songs. In the evenings, the hall filled with voices, stories, and hope. In the free cities, the council's charter sparked imitation. In Pentos and Bravos, merchant councils began inviting more voices. In Lys, the merchant queens offered contracts to Westerosi ships. No single city trusted enough to change their own crowns. But their eyes were turned west now, wary and curious. The rumor of dragons, unity and peace was as potent as wildfire, and more tempting. Syrell Lannister, in her fortress above Lannisport, watched her influence wane. The old lioness remained cunning, and the gold of the rock still held sway over some restless spirits. But as fewer lords answered her call, and more merchants traded with the council, she retreated to plotting and sending spies rather than open defiance. The annual Prophecy Forum blossomed into a festival of light and color. The village of Willowhall hosted the gathering, torches burning all night as maesters, wise women and singers competed in telling tales, riddles, and omens. Arya, ever the skeptic, judged the contest for Most Useful Prophecy, a title won by a grandmother from the Rills, who predicted a bumper crop of leeks based on the direction her hens slept. Maester Willem published a new book each year, full of dreams, predictions, and the council's own tongue-in-cheek commentary. Even the Faith of the Seven, slowest to trust, sent Septon Maribald to offer prayers of peace and healing, his gentle sermons drawing crowds wherever he traveled. On the first night of high summer, River Run glowed with lanterns as the repaired outer wall was unveiled. Edmure, Sansa, and Daenerys stood atop the battlements, the crowd filling the yard and riverbank below. Arya watched from a low rooftop, Ghost at her side, the two of them content to be silent witnesses. Edmure raised his goblet, voice booming over the stones. For all who labored, high and low, with hand and heart, may these walls shelter us in peace as they once did in war. May our sons and daughters forget the taste of fear. May our fields bloom, our rivers run clear, and our songs outlast the storms. The people cheered, tossing wildflowers and ribbons as the bells rang. Tables creaked with food and drink, and the music played long into the night. Dances, riddles, stories. Children raced with direwolf pups through the grass. Lovers slipped away beneath the willows, and even the old warriors raised a cup to peace. Jon and Daenerys mingled among the people, sharing laughter and listening to dreams. Sansa danced with Gendry, and then with Edmure, her eyes shining. Arya, reluctant as ever, allowed herself to be pulled into a round with Lyanna Mormont and half the orphans of the keep. Arianne and Sihara sang a Dornish ballad, wine-red voices twining in the night. As the firelight ebbed, the council members gathered one last time atop the battlements. The night was warm and starlit, the banners of wolf, sun, dragon, trout, bear, and every house stirring gently in the breeze. Daenerys lifted her goblet, her voice strong. We began as rivals and strangers, and in fire and blood we found common cause. Now as friends and kin we have given the realm a future. There will be hardship, and there will be loss, but there will also be hope. Let us keep it alive, together, through all the seasons to come." Jon met her gaze, his own voice low but sure. "The realm will remember this night, not for the feasting, nor the banners, but for the promise we keep, every day, as long as we stand together." One by one, they raised their cups. The stars shimmered above, the river whispered below, and a hush fell as the realm breathed in the peace they had wrought. In the years that followed, storms would come and go. Crops would fail and flourish. Disputes would flare and fade. Hearts would break and heal. But always, beneath the banners and beside the rivers, the council endured, living proof that even in a world born of fire and shadow, the light of unity could burn long and bright, so long as there were those willing to tend its flame. Ka. The river fog rolled thick and blue in the summer's first cool dawn, veiling river-run's towers and the glistening poplars at water's edge. In the pre-dawn hush, the keep pulsed with a slow, contented life. Bakers stirring dough in stone ovens, maids carrying milk and honey up winding stairs, sentries stamping their feet as mist clung to their mail. For once, there was no dread of invasion, no frantic calls of warning. The banners above the gate, wolf, trout, dragon, sun, and star, hung motionless, gilded by the first slip of sunlight cresting over the fields. In the solar, Sansa Stark sat with her ledgers, pale fingers steady despite the faint tremor in her wrist from last night's revels. She had slept only a handful of hours, but her mind was clear and her heart full. There were letters from every reach of the realm, updates from the storm-lashed stepstones, requests from Old Town, a bundle of wildling stories transcribed in Maester Willem's patient hand. Each missive was a thread in the new tapestry of Westeros, every message a promise that the old world was not returning. Sansa smiled at a note from a fisherman in White Harbor, describing the catch of strange, golden-scaled river fish that had followed the new trade ships upriver. A sign, he claimed, a fortune sent by the gods. Below it was a plea from a village elder in the north. They wished to host the next prophecy forum, citing a dream of a great fire that did not burn. Sansa marked that one for Arya, who would delight in the tale. Beside the letters was the day's agenda, a neat listing of disputes and questions for the council, all more mundane than anything she could have imagined in the years of war. A quarrel over fishing rights, an apprentice's complaint against a jealous master, a request for more healing herbs from the south. She set aside her quill as Daenerys entered, the sunlight catching at her silver hair, a circlet of woven wildflowers in her hand. Rhaegal's morning shadow drifted over the open window, the dragon gliding above the town before rising to vanish into cloud. Daenerys wore a plain blue gown belted at the waist, her feet bare, her eyes full of bright, restless intelligence. "Another letter from Braavos?" she asked, sitting on the window bench, her tone light. Sansa nodded. "They're sending a delegation to the harvest fair, and a troop of mummers, if you can believe it. The Braavosi want to perform a play about the council's founding." Daenerys grinned. "Will they cast you as the wise queen, or the sly fox?" Sansa rolled her eyes. "Neither, I hope. If they do, I'll send Arya in my place. She loves to skulk behind the scenes." "Bester." Daenerys sobered, glancing out over the fields where tents and market stalls were rising. "It's strange, isn't it? To feel the world bending toward peace, as if for the first time." Sansa closed the ledger and looked her friend full in the face. "It won't last forever. But while it does, we must make it strong. Root it so deep that nothing can pull it up, not even a new king or another war." Daenerys nodded, thoughtful. "I spoke to the wildling children by the river yesterday. They asked me if dragons ever sleep. I told them even dragons must rest, now that the fighting's done." Sansa smiled, the memory warming her. "Did they believe you?" "Only a little." Daenerys' laughter was quiet, private, but one girl said she'd never seen a world without war. So she was learning to dream of one. A knock came and Arya slipped in. Hair windswept, boots muddy, ghost at her heel. She tossed a scrap of parchment onto Sansa's table, her smile quick and sly. The Red Priestess in Maidenpool is a mummer herself. Her prophecy was that the harvest would be early if the farmers sang at sunrise. I watched half the village sing this morning, and now they swear their fields are twice as green. Damduar. Daenerys laughed. You're making a new religion, Arya. Let them keep their songs, Arya replied, shrugging. Better that than swords. Ghost nuzzled Sansa's knee, and for a moment all three women sat in companionable silence, listening to the distant shouts as the markets opened and the first bells of Riverrun's day began to ring. The council met in the long hall as sunlight burned away the last of the mist. 12 seats, 12 voices, each different as water and fire, yet bound now by a pact older than any written oath. The relics at the table's heart shone in the golden light. Dark Sister's blade catching the sun, the weirwood wolf's teeth bared in carved warning, Nymeria's spear resting across a folded silk. Gendry, fresh from the smithy, presented a new coin, hammered with the sigil of the council, a circlet of stars. Minted in storms and for the first time, he announced, passing it to Sihara Sand, who rolled it between calloused fingers. Sihara nodded her approval. Dorne's merchants like it. They say it feels lucky in the hand. Lord Edmure, hair streaked with gray, leaned forward. Maester Willem's letters from the north say free folk are teaching the new children to read by coinlight. That's a first? Gendry beamed, pride warming his normally guarded face. The best forgers are wildlings these days. No one's sharper with metal, not after all the years of making arrowheads and traps. Lyanna Mormont, still small but fierce, gave a curt nod. Bear Island's market is full of new traders. Some speak only old tongue, but everyone knows how to bargain. We're planting orchards with seeds from the Reach. Now, Arianne Martell, resplendent in sunset silk, steered talk to broader shores. Norvos and Tyrosh have signed the council's treaty. Their ships bring trade, silks and pepper, dye and gold. Korth wants to send a new embassy, so long as the council vows to keep pirates from the Basilisk Isles. Jan Royce added, the Vales had a mild spring, and the mountain passes are clear. We've dispatched patrols to the high valleys. No sign of old bandit lords. Some knights grumble about soft years, but their children are learning letters instead of swordplay. Then when Davos Seaworth, graybeard shining, read the latest from White Harbor and Gulltown. Both ports full of cargo, food's flowing, and the new orphan schools are filling. Sansa's project for learning, will she need more scribes? Sansa replied, always. And builders. The libraries will be full before winter. Arya was last, perched on her seat like a sparrow. Maidenpool's singing, and so is Duskendale. A grandmother in the rills swears her cows are giving more milk since she saw the council's banner fly over the road. Prophecy or not, the people want to believe. We'd best make sure they don't lose the habit. Then, the council agreed, each signing new orders. Repairs for the roads, apprenticeships for the orphans, coins and grain for the poorest towns, a joint letter to the free cities promising peace if trade stayed open. In the gardens, Daenerys walked with Jon Snow as children darted past, laughter pealing. The gardens had been replanted with flowers from every corner of Westeros. Dorne's orange blossoms and Reach roses, wild mint from the north, lilies from the Vale. Rhaegal flew overhead, his wings carving the clouds, his presence now both legend and assurance. Jon watched the children and the dragon, his eyes softer than they'd been in years. Do you ever wonder, he said, if we've done enough? If this can really hold? Daenerys took his hand, their steps slowing by a pool where minnows flack. No one ever does enough. But every stone we lay, every quarrel we settle without swords, it adds up. The next generation will know the world we could only imagine. What, Simon? Jon smiled, more at peace than she'd seen him. You sound like Sansa. I hope so. Daenerys squeezed his hand. She sees further than any of us sometimes. She was the first to believe the council could heal more than wounds. A messenger arrived, breathless and flushed, bearing a scroll. From Sunspear, my lord, my lady died to Tildurl. Princess Arianne writes that the first new ships are ready. She asks for your blessing to sail as far as Volantis. Me permo. Jon nodded, taking the letter. The world's getting smaller, or we're getting braver. Both, Daenerys answered, her gaze drifting skyward where Rhaegal vanished into sunlight. High summer came, and the harvest fair filled Riverrun's fields with a riot of color and music. Stalls offered sweetbreads, fire-roasted apples, Dornish wines, Mirish silk, bear pelts from the north. Minstrels sang the old songs and the new, while a troupe from Braavos staged their play. A wildly embellished version of the council's founding, with Gendry cast as a king who could talk to horses and Arya as a witch who could become a wolf at will. The audience howled, Arya most of all. Sansa and Daenerys presided over the contests. Archery, horse racing. A riddle-off judged by Maester Willem. Gendry faced the champion smith of Old Town in a contest to forge a horseshoe fastest. Lyanna Mormont bested a reach knight in the lists. Sahara Sand taught dancing with knives to a crowd of bold children. Even Rhaegal joined the spectacle, swooping low as the crowd cheered, though he never landed within the fairgrounds. As dusk fell and lanterns burned like new constellations, Jon and Daenerys stood together atop the castle's gatehouse, looking out over the lights and laughter. The people are different now, Daenerys said, voice low. They still remember hunger, war, loss. But I see something else. Hope and pride and trust. They are not waiting for the next king. They are building something themselves. Benderon. Jon watched as Arya, laughing and windblown, darted through the crowd. Sansa stood beside Gendry, their smiles easy, familiar. Rebuilding too, Jon said, even if we never see what grows from it. Daenerys rested her head on his shoulder. It's enough to know we planted it. Over the following months, the council's work continued. New roads connected river and hill, ports filled with grain and trade. Letters arrived from far places, thank yous from Pentos, questions from the Summer Isles, cautious greetings from Lys and Korth. Old feuds faded, new bonds flourished. The wildlings at the wall sent news of a fruitful hunt and a promise to send a delegation to the next festival. Maester Willem's history spread across the land, and his Chronicles of the New Unity became the first book every child learned to read. A tale of battles survived and peace made. Sansa's libraries opened in White Harbor, Gulltown, and Old Town, soon overflowing. The faith held its own peace gatherings. The Red Temple sent healing priests as well as preachers. There were setbacks. A fire in a grain house, a flood in the Neck, a brawl between merchant captains in King's Landing. But each time, the council responded, sending aid, settling disputes, rebuilding what was lost. Ghosts of the past stirred, but they could not break the pattern. As the leaves turned gold and the harvest was gathered, the council met again. They reviewed the accounts, weighed the new petitions, signed the next year's charter. At the end, Sansa lifted her cup and spoke, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. We remember the world as it was, broken by war, hungry for hope. But we are not bound by what came before. We are what we build together. Let the realm remember this, and let us teach our children to build higher still. Outside, beneath banners bright against the starlit sky, the people celebrated. And in the hush between the music and the morning, Westeros dreamed. This time, of a peace that would outlast the longest night.